Sure you did. All right.
Oh my God.
It's This city council meeting is a hybrid meeting. The city council members of the public can view this meeting live on channel 8, the city's website and YouTube. Live Spanish translation services are being provided tonight.
It does.
Council meeting by telephone. Please dial 720-386-9023 and use code 104091. And I will call the study session to order. And since, what is it, 6:01, and then we'll recess to the Urban Renewal Authority meeting. So we'll now call URA meeting to order and ask the secretary for a roll call.
Chair Douglas,
Here.
Vice Chair Noble,
Here.
Commissioner Madera,
James.
Commissioner Teeter,
Here.
Commissioner Chacon,
Here.
Commissioner Kim, Commissioner Yu,
Here.
Commissioner Ford, Commissioner Douglas, here, Commissioner Amador,
Here.
Commissioner Mashuga, Commissioner Tedesco. Chair Douglas, you have a forum.
All right, I will now motion in a second to excuse the members not present.
Second.
First and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Okay, motion carries. Seven of us?
7 to 5.
7 to 5. All right. Approval of the minutes. Need a motion and second to approve the minutes. So moved. Second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion passes 7 to 5. Okay, presentation, CDOT project 229022, sorry, 22922 impact to the Mile Greyhound Park Track B.
Thank you, Chairman Douglas, members of the Urban Renewal Authority. Dylan, just quick clarification, Chaz Tedesco, Commissioner Tedesco just texted me, said he's on as well.
I didn't hear him. Let me see if I can get him over then.
He said I'm on virtually, but we'll go ahead and get started. I want to introduce, we do have Adams Parks and members from the CDOT team here tonight to go over the project. What I plan to do is a 2-slide introduction. Then I'll hand it over to CDOT to give an update on the project and what their request is from the Urban Renewal Authority Board. There's CDOT folks in the back. So as you may remember at your time as council members, back in 2021, the city and CDOT entered into an intergovernmental agreement that talked about the coordination and cooperation to do what is currently about a $27 million project on Highway 2 Vasquez and that entire corridor part of Commerce City. The project is being led by CDOT and supported primarily by the Public Works Department here at the city. We are at the stage where the plans are ready to move into construction. They're finishing up the right-of-way acquisition. And one of the last acquisition parcels is Tract B, or a portion of Tract B that you own at Mile High Greyhound Park. In order to build the improvements at the intersection of 62nd and Vasquez, CDOT needs to acquire in the city about 17,000 square feet of right-of-way, 8,000 square feet for permanent utility and pedestrian infrastructure along 62nd, about another 5,000 square feet of an easement running through Tract B on the private drive that is yet to be constructed that will convey stormwater. And then last but not least, about 7,000 square feet for temporary construction throughout that. And then also an agreement to utilize the detention pond that you built last year that utilizes all the drainage on Tract B. The budgeted amount for the land, if we were a private property owner and they were approaching us, estimated at about $1.6 million for that. That's based on a preliminary budget of about $50 a square foot for the easements in the land, which, as you know, is higher than we currently have other parts of the tract for sale, but those are larger tracts that are at a lower rate. The transportation project is anticipated to improve all the traffic in the area, but as you may know, it does impact, selling that right of way or dedicating that right of way does impact the amount of developable area. The way that we've talked to our retail developer and the way that they've laid the project out, they believe that it's going to reduce the developable area by one tract or one buildable pad. Really unavoidable, because without that, then we have to forego the transportation project, which adds tremendous benefit to the project with ingress and egress and access. In talking to Public Works and CDOT, the project is not anticipated to be able to absorb the acquisition of it. So in the sense of saying we want money for our land, in order to do that, the way Public Works has described it is there's not additional funds. So we'd have to value engineer other portions of the project for the Urban Renewal Authority to get paid cash for the land. So with that, one of the ideas that staff would like to float out to you as part of our recommendation at the end of this presentation is that the Urban Renewal Authority owes the city about $13.5 million. Of that, about $6.8 million was for the acquisition and development of the land portions of what the city would like dedicated. Is that really with the options that we have here, that the CCURA can sell CDOT in the city, the right-of-way easements and permanent access to the detention facilities for negotiated monetary compensation, where we'd say that's worth $1.5 million, give us the money and we'll give you the land. Option two would be that because we have $13 million of a loan that you still owe to the city for the development of that land, that it might make sense to say, okay, we're going to figure out what the monetary value is and just subtract it from the loan value. That way there's no exchange of money, but in that scenario, it does make our ability to go out to market to finance the institutional anchor, the multi-purpose complex easier, because we'd have less debt on our sheets. The last would be that the Urban Renewal Authority thinks that the project is so important that that you simply dedicate the right-of-way easements and permanent access to the detention facility to the city for the project. And with that, I'd love to open it up to Adam and his team from CDOT, and then we'll come back to questions. Yes, sir.
Okay, well, I got a question, but go ahead and do your
Sure.
presentation and all.
Okay, thank you. Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Parks with CDOT. I'm a resident engineer, and I've been working on this project for a couple of years. Actually, I started back in 2020 and then became full-time on this project last year. So I want to give you an update on this project and the status. Luckily, we have good news this month. We have our FONSI signature, which is an important milestone for the project where we've accomplished our NEPA clearance. And the signatures for that came in this month. So we're actually all set with our scope. You can see that this project is located in really what could be considered one of the gateways to Commerce City. And it's an intersection that is somewhat infamous. If you ever have sat in traffic and waited your turn, there's a lot of different angles you can come in to this intersection at 60th. It's a little bit nerve-wracking at times, but it somehow works. And it's impressive that it does. What we'd like to do is improve the intersection, show it flows better and has safer operations. So we're going to zoom in on the next slide. And this shows the heart of the project at 60th in Vasquez. This is a busy intersection. Right now, there's 6 different places where cars can enter the intersection. You can come in from Parkway, you can come in from Dexter, and it takes a lot of time for everyone to take turns. So when we're finished, we want to take this to a standard 4-legged intersection that you see anywhere else in the city, where it's, just four branches coming into the intersection. And it'll improve safety and also improve traffic. So some of the traffic jams and congestion that we have is a result of just too much going on in this intersection. You can see we'll have service roads built that go to the west to bring the traffic out and back to 60th Avenue to come in from this side. And Parkway Drive will be changed so that it does not enter the intersection from a diagonal from this angle. Instead, that traffic will be redirected to 60th and so if 60th can be considered an entrance to Commerce City, 62nd could be considered the development project. Right now, there's no direct access from Vasquez to this development. Today, this road can be considered a right route only, and there's no way to come, Mile High Greyhound Park, this is a tongue twister, to come out and go north. So this signal will movement access. Also, one thing that we've done that's to innovate is that the southbound direction constant green at that signal. So we're going to separate the southbound traffic in this direction from the signal so that it will be green, signalized green 24/7 all the time. So there won't be any stops in that direction. Zooming in a little bit here, here's the green arrow showing that southbound movement. There's an example of this at the airport. There's also one in northern Aurora, where we call it a continuous green T intersection. It will be widened to provide the turning lanes that are necessary. That brings us to the right-of-way impacts along the Greyhound. And let me point out this really quickly. This is a design feature that we've been coordinating on for at least a year. The treated and sent to a detention facility. This is where we've been coordinating with the developer and URA to bring the drainage from this Commerce City road really up to this point. This being a Commerce City facility over here, really it would take to this facility. And reminder, this Vasquez is the CDOT facility. 62nd Avenue is the Commerce City owned roadway, which the project will construct, but we do need footprint to be able to build the widened section of 62nd Avenue. And this is showing and highlighting the needs for that space so that the traffic can operate and have access to Vasquez.
And just to call out the different colors again, the green is what the city and CDOT are requesting for the additional turn lanes. So those will become turn lanes. The kind of the peached color will be for utility sidewalks. There are existing sidewalks. As part of the project, CDOT has to demolish the curbs and gutters and sidewalks that exist, build 2 additional lanes, and then construct new sidewalks. So that's what's shown in that peach color. The yellow color is simply temporary construction easements to allow CDOT on the property throughout construction of those sidewalks and turn lanes. And then this blue area right here indicates a drainage easement for 62nd, which is a City of Commerce City road to drain through the development into the detention pond on track B that already exists today. As I stated earlier, this does take away from some of the developable land at Mile High, but it is incredibly desirable for any retail developer, including the one that we're under contract with, to have the intersection improvements that Adam was defining earlier. Right now, there's only right in, right out. This project opens it up to a full activated intersection.
Any questions about the design or status of the project?
Yeah, are you gonna be able to go
Rocky,
from, I'm sorry, go ahead. Are you gonna be able to go from 62nd Avenue to southbound Highway 85? With that design,
Yes.
even though that green line is 24/7 green?
So yes, there will be a barrier, a raised barrier in this dark gray section so that the turning movements can come and merge up to speed before they merge with that traffic.
Over to 85, okay. Okay, and I had another concern on when rush traffic is in the afternoons and people's all headed north and they're coming through 60th Avenue. I'm concerned that they're gonna get up to 62nd. If that light turns red, now the traffic's gonna back up to 60th, and then it's a red light camera zone, and you're gonna have somebody trying to get through the intersection, but they can't because they got cars on the other side.
So CDOT does own and maintain both of these signals, and we'll plan to have that signal timing arranged so that when that traffic comes through and the high volume comes up north, we can time it so that's green there as well.
And that'll prevent that, promise.
Yeah, luckily this will have, this will be a lot quicker with only 2 phases versus this one will have a few more down here, so.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes. We were talking about this afternoon, and we really haven't seen what was going to happen on Highway 85 since in about 3 years. We haven't had somebody from CDOT here talking to us about it. It appears to me that if you run the lane that's a straight through lane, I don't see how people cross over to say the Starbucks or the Dollar Tree or the Arby's on the west side of 85? How do they get there?
So that previous slide was to the north, now we're back south. And this southern section will be unchanged, so there'll still be opportunities to turn and come to some of those businesses you mentioned.
What if you're on 60th Avenue
north.
on the east side and you want to come straight across? How do you
Yeah.
accomplish that?
You're still gonna have it, right?
Yeah, 60th will still remain full access across.
So the only
How
thing
do
you're
you-
terminating there.
Okay, could you let me say?
Yeah, sorry. Sorry.
You said it's going to go straight through, the traffic will go straight through, so just clear that up for me, how
Sure.
that traffic is going straight through without stopping at a light.
So that would be so I'll quickly show this, I'll answer your question on the next slide, and on this slide, I'll just kind of reiterate that your entrances to come into the intersection will be from these 4 angles. And we're taking away some of the diagonal auxiliary accesses. Only this Parkway Drive is one of those that comes in at an angle. Everyone else has to wait with the red while they come in at an angle. And in the future, they would just be redirected to 60th and 62nd.
Okay, if you make the screen smaller again, there you are. It says continuous lane allows southbound Vasquez through traffic to travel through intersection without stopping.
Correct, and let's go to the other slide again. So that is only speaking to the 62nd here. Because it's a T intersection, when there's only if it's a T shape, this gives us the chance to do the continuous screen on the continuous for one of the directions, so.
Thank you, perfect, because I think that actually, that resolves a lot of the questions that we had raised 3 years ago. You solved the problem, very good.
Chairman Emder.
Yeah, sorry. So how many lanes are you gonna make on 62nd there? So you're
Still
gonna have-
2.
Just, just gonna be a 1 and 1?
2 southbound on Vasquez will remain, and 1 turning lane will come in here to create that 3rd lane.
And then so where it gets on the highway 2, is it still gonna be one way going? If you turn right, you're still going one way on the highway 2 in Vasquez where it sits up. So you're still gonna have the turn in for highway 2 at 63rd, I guess, not quite 64th.
Yeah, there's 2 different right turn options here. So one of the lanes goes directly to the Highway 2, which I would suggest that the city find a new name for it, since it's no longer a CDOT road. You're welcome to come up with a great new name. Because it sometimes confuses folks, not a CDOT road. Highway 2 is here, and you can turn right onto that, and then the other right turn lane would take you on to, which I hear you guys saying 85. I agree. It's a really confusing. It's confusing that we have multiple names for this road, and it sounds like there's a preference for 85.
6 and 85.
Yeah, 6 and 85. We're proposing a preference for 85 to simplify it, because it does seem like that's more commonly referred to as 85.
And then are you gonna take out the turn on right there at 63rd?
Right here?
Yep.
So this one, we're modifying so that, and I can't remember if we've finished the concept there. Right now, there's an island preventing, I think the island on the east side is being modified or will be modified, but a lot of this will remain unchanged, I believe, as far as being able to access there. I don't think I have the graphic available now, but can provide that if you need it.
Chairman Cho.
Oh, I think, did you have something? Yeah. The Highway 2 is always my exit off of 85.
Hold on.
Is that still available?
Yes, it will still be there. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I go? I'm concerned about the housing developments that are gonna be in that space. Is that adding more pollution to that space because of the constant road that's gonna be going nonstop?
You
And,
talking up here?
Yeah.
Okay.
and then, is there any way to offer a metered light to some degree there when it's turning as a turning lane or something that can be just as consistent as a turning lane there? Because I feel like that's gonna be, there's not friendly drivers in that space. I don't see a lot of people letting each other merge.
And where exactly you're referring to?
The consistent turning lane that goes into,
Oh, so
Yeah.
coming down here?
sorry, 62nd, yes,
Yes, that one?
yes.
Yes, so there's enough space here that these cars will be separated by a barrier until they've reached a similar speed, which will really help with that merging. And then there is 3 lanes all the way to the light, so that should give space for folks to move back and forth, so.
Is there a way between what that when that barrier is to have a metered light sometimes, or something that can have metered on the other side to allow that kind of zipper in?
Oh, and you're talking about actually metering this side so
Yes.
that we're actually proposing a meter for this ramp. It's an option at this point. So this ramp coming in could be metered. I think what we've decided is we're gonna do the underground installation and then see how our budget allows for a meter at the end of the project. And that could be used for special events or certain occasions where we wanna meter some of the traffic that's coming in to keep Vasquez flowing. So that's something we're looking at.
And given that this is a DIC community and we need multimodal support in that space, is there any way to get pedestrian bridges across all of that?
We did look at pedestrian bridges. Largely the cost was enough that we didn't have the money for it, unfortunately, but they were considered. The good news about the pedestrian movements, well, let me answer this one really quick. Right now, you've got stop and go traffic in the morning throughout this whole stretch going southbound. And when we're finished, that stop and go should go away, which should reduce some of that pollution that's coming from trucks going, stopping. And then the other slide, if you don't mind. Actually up to would be better. Yes. So this one, the pedestrian movement is really long. It's a long route right now. It's going to improve with a really large median island here and a shortened path for pedestrians to use on this crosswalk. We're also completing the sidewalk along this side. So it is being improved for pedestrians.
Is there any way that the city can do, or the URA can support more pedestrian bridges in that space specifically? It's already a dangerous pedestrian intersection. I feel like this is an improvement, don't get me wrong, please, but
Yeah.
it was never remedied.
So the city could look at it. I mean, obviously it'd be in conjunction with CDOT because it'd be their right of way. In which we would either be traversing both above grade, below grade, and there's obviously other factors that play into it. I would recommend against it from the URA perspective because per state law, you are supposed to utilize the funds that are generated within the URA that are going to improvements that will benefit that URA district. So given that we have two different URA districts, we have what is the Parkway Plaza URA, which includes the King Soopers property down to 60th and that triangular piece. And then when you cross over 62nd, you have Mahi Graham Park. Technically, you should be using those improvements along those frontages because those frontages would benefit the development and or the businesses and or potentially residential that would utilize it. You have to go through an analysis against state law and obviously with working with Lee and our outside legal counsel as to whether or not a bridge across a highway to other particular properties outside of that district would warrant that benefit. So I think you start to get into some complexities there. We're trying to tie it to the URA. The city could do that.
Would
You would-
retail developers be interested? Because that's still a whole population that lives right by there that instead of driving could legitimately walk to Starbucks or other places in
Yeah.
a safe manner.
You know, it's you're darned if you do, you're darned if you don't. I mean, really, the retail development is really focused along the commuter traffic of 85-6 because they're able to pull those average daily trips or a percentage of those into their site. That's why there's such a significant interest and why we were able to bring the commercial developer to track B was because of this potential traffic signal that would slow traffic, that would be able to bring traffic in and have a direct route to that major highway. When it comes to the pedestrian movement, it's if and whether or not we've got enough of the rooftops from the areas to the west, that would make sense bringing east. And given that we don't have that the retailers aren't going to see a lot of benefit to that. They see a lot of benefit of making the improvements east coming west along 62nd and along 64 and picking the traffic heading north and southbound along their property front, or what would be their property frontage once we get to that stage.
My last hope would be then RTD, because I saw how many RTD stops are right there. Some type of facilitation and collaboration with them too. Just something has to happen within that space because it's already deadly as it is. And it's never had that kind of form of walkability.
What I would recommend is that at a city council meeting, that city council raise the question about staff continuing to work with CDOT in investigating potential additional pedestrian facilities east-west and what could be done and what those costs would be. Once again, that could be above grade, below grade, but since it's probably more suited for the overall community and just not the URA, that's what I would encourage the city council to raise for the city manager.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Okay,
Right.
Origin. Thank you. My question is just more around, so if you look at the slide around the proposed changes, Sal, if you go to that slide real quick. I hear you when you say this is an improve, or keep going. Keep going. Right there, so zooming in, it's gonna widen the pathway a little bit for pedestrians to be able to walk. It will improve, but it won't totally correct it because it's a busy intersection, right? But it will improve it, right? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, correct. So right now, one of the longest routes is from here. There's a very small island here, and this island is going to become about 30 or 40 feet across. So that's a nice big pedestrian refuge to have that space and time. Also, we're moving this is going to come in closer. So
Okay.
also these stops will be improving this situation here with ADA compliant access and curb ramps to the RTD stops here. So, yeah.
And my other question is just around, so overall, I think the design makes sense. It's going to improve traffic, and I like the idea of the metered, metered lights? Is that what you said? Metered lights at the top. What was it when you're coming down an on-ramp? Because that's bumper to bumper, and you always see in the morning people try to jump that median or try to do when they're frustrated. But my question actually is around like when you start developing this or start moving forward, what's the communication? I don't know if this is the right place to ask that around just communication, timeline, because as you start to develop this area, there's nowhere else to go, right? And it's already hectic now in terms of traffic around, I think, 6:15.
Sure.
In the morning.
So you're talking about traffic impacts during construction?
Yeah, during construction, like what happens during construction?
Yeah, we actually are really happy to have our contractor already on board. We're using a CMGC method. So that means we've picked a contractor, Jalisco. Some of you probably know Jalisco. They're in Commerce City. And they are our pre-construction contractor. And they will have the first shot at building the project if we can negotiate a price. And we're ready to go and actually get started really as soon as we can, starting up at 62nd. And we're talking about the phasing right now and what that should look like. We're talking to our traffic folks, Jocelyn, over at CDOT to analyze that, to make sure we strike a balance between, we don't want to make it too much worse, for traffic. We also don't want to be out there for 4 years, so striking the balance of how much can we really do with lane closures.
And when will that become available for us to like look at or hear about or?
Yeah, actually what we could do is the results of we're going to have what we call an S-bar, which is how we propose lane closures out there. And right now we can do lane closures, single lane closures during certain hours of the day. We're probably going to propose that some of those lane closures be longer than just half a day. Like some of these lane closures will be longer. We have to figure out where can they be and where they make sense. Southbound, we don't need any, fortunately, which is great. That's where most of the congestion is. Northbound, there will be some because of the reconstruction at that T intersection. So we'll be working through that and we can share that when it's ready, probably a few months.
And my last question is just around like communication with the businesses over here on 60th. I know there's a Starbucks, Wendy's, and then there's the Dollar Tree. What type of conversations have you had with them already? And do they like the idea of, if you had a conversation about having those extended roads already, connector roads?
We have had many conversations. So we started this design process back with the charrette in 2020, and it was virtual during the COVID lockdown, and we were all socially distanced in a big room. And the idea is we talked about roundabouts, we talked about grade separations, and we also talked to these landowners. Every single one of them that has a right-of-way impact, we've been in contact with for a couple of years. And they've been supportive. I think everyone understands that this signal doesn't, the way the intersection is today, no one likes it. No one really prefers it. They're ready for a change. And no one likes, me included, no one likes the cameras that, you're looking around at all the different things going on. And suddenly you realize you're still in the intersection and you get a ticket. So it's confusing. And I think it could be improved. So.
Sorry, last question. With there's a bunch of concrete barricades, right, or barriers up and down. Will this remove some of that, or will this project improve the look of that as well, or is that out of the scope?
So aesthetically, the median treatment, so I believe the treatment is going to be narrowed. I don't think we've finished exactly designing the median quite yet. That's kind of one of our ongoing design
Well,
discussions.
no, the median in the middle, but also if you look at Dexter to the left, across from there, there's what's it?
The concrete barrier, the concrete barrier that's
Yeah,
still there.
and it's all the, just the pieces that are put together, yes.
I think the reason that too is because a lot of the diesels that come out of 60th here right there run into those, are having a problem turning those, making those turns, because all that concrete's right down those corners too.
So that would be one of those more
Yeah.
aesthetic treatments that we hope to address, but it's currently not in the scope. Yeah.
Was that something the city can look at as we think about this area, or is that outside of URA?
Once again, a collaborative effort that we have to work with CDOT, given that that's CDOT's right of way.
Okay.
So, so what we're talking about on this project is, so Dexter's gonna be closed, you're not turning out of Dexter anymore, right? So you're closing off the Dexter Street to turn onto Vasquez right there.
Yeah, also, it's the northbound one in particular that is being rerouted back to here.
What about southbound? 'Cause
Southbound is
southbound-
currently today, it's actually signed that you're not supposed to turn left from here. I don't know how well that is,
There's a light there that lets them turn.
Yeah, I don't know what the compliance is like, but at least it does say you're not, so you can see our design would make it more forced that there be an island to make sure there's no violations there, so.
And then on Dahlia Street over here on the bottom part, you're still gonna have it running in right into the traffic onto 60th without the turn lane, and you're just gonna move that over for the RTD.
Yeah, this one luckily doesn't have to be changed very much. Right now, there is no access left turning, so these are just, the sidewalks are just substandard and the curb rates are substandard, so we'd fix those.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem, then I'm gonna wrap it up, because I got a
And
question.
this
for you.
doesn't affect though the overpass that's already happening and coming down onto 85.
The existing over, yeah, we're not
Just a
gonna
little
be
bit
changing,
north.
yeah, the structures are gonna remain as is,
Okay,
the
okay.
roadway bridges are gonna remain as is.
And I would say that the only thing that makes me a little sad is that this has been one of the most unique intersections in all of the region. And we're pretty famous for it here in Commerce City, and you've now simplified it. It's just four corners, so there you have it. I've had a ticket there though for getting confused, so I certainly know what that experience is like.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate the changes. And you talk about roundabouts. So on proposal change north, that has 62nd, and then it has that weird boot or pork chop. Is there any consideration to put a roundabouts in? Because to me, even where that traffic signal is, if you had a roundabout there, that's gonna slow traffic down. People still can use slow movement to go, you still could have the highway in there, but you cut down on cost. You still go around, you get on to go north going south or going north, still has the same functionality as the light.
Yeah, no, I love roundabouts. I think roundabouts are a great solution. The challenges here would be having all these lanes and all the truck volume. The lanes would get to be 13, 14 feet wide for the turning movements. And that would mean probably a larger right-of-way impact, actually. So it would either have to impact some of this property or towards the Mile High Greyhound Park.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That could be something if the city would like to pursue, we could talk about that. Because actually this is all starting from here. Highway 2 is a Commerce City facility, so it could be considered.
Still traffic calming and to get people in and out of the Greyhound Park,
I'll have to provide our detailed design. We're finishing it in here since we need to change some of the movements. We still want to have access. I think we're still maintaining this right turning movement, and we are also, I think we're deleting this. This is a left turn entrance. I think we're deleting that from the design. And since they can go here and do that now, I think we're taking it away here.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if a roundabout would work,
Yeah.
but
Well, I thought I'd just ask. All right, well, I appreciate that.
Sure.
So like you, that what you need. Oh,
Can I
Councilmember.
ask a really quick
Board Member
question?
Douglas?
Just got you here and you mentioned Callisto. They build bridges too, don't they?
Yeah, they do a lot of stuff. They've done a lot of work for CDOT before, so we're familiar with them. So they've been really great and they've been helpful kind of refining the details of our design.
I forgot to ask about anyone online. What's the next question?
That too, but I have a clarifying question for the body. After you asked that question about online.
Commissioner Tedesco, if you can hear us, do you have any questions?
I do not. Did you hear me?
We do now.
I do not.
Thank you.
So just to make sure that we have consensus, because obviously today is just a presentation, so looking for support in moving forward with staff recommendation, option number 2. So that we're able to continue to keep moving forward with this project. They plan to go out to bid June of this year. Which is obviously depending on the construction of this may be able to be delivered. Adam, you can correct me if I'm wrong, within a year's time frame. And one of the better parts is that we're actually using federal appropriations from last year in the amount of 4.2 to help with the construction of this intersection, which means previously the URA had committed up to $2 million out of its own coffers to help support. But with the federal appropriation, it's allowed us to reapply that $2 million more internally to the development, particularly the commercial site, in supporting that development. So very important project in being able to maximize the use of those dollars to support the commercial development and obviously applying the federal dollars to this intersection that has allowed for us to be able to move this forward in the timeframe as opposed to 2026 delivery, maybe 2025 is what I've been led to believe.
And I would add that the pond that we need to tie into, that we've been coordinating into our design, if we did have to restart the design process for a water detention pond, it would be a delay of a year for the project construction.
All right. Seems like everybody's on board, so thank you very much.
As far as the options go, is there a preference between if the URA wants monetary compensation for their land, a reduction in the loan that the URA owes to the city, which staff is recommending because the city was the bank for the URA, and now the bank wants some of the land that the URA borrowed money to buy. So it just makes sense to say, okay, we borrowed the money to buy the land. Now you want some of the land. Can we reduce what we have to repay you over the next 20 years? And then the third option would be that the URA feels like this project is important enough. As Jason said a minute ago, the URA had committed informally some commitment to help finance the project because the city secured grants. That was no longer necessary. So those dollars have been reinvested in the project. So really the options are monetary compensation, reduction of the loan, or just dedication of the land with no compensation.
I'm okay with option 2, but I'm also understanding that option 2 is probably the more streamlined approach as well, right? So
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
it's faster approach. So yeah,
So the city would basically obtain the right of way from the Urban Renewal Authority, and then the city would provide CDOT the legal ability to enter the property and cause the work to be done on a roadway that the city will own in perpetuity.
yeah, staff recommendation as well.
Staff recommendation is option 2, in which we would determine the value of the request and then come back to the city council in the Urban Renewal Authority next month to approve an amended loan agreement, which would reduce what the URA owes to the city. That would also make it, as we're talking about going out and financing the multicultural or the multi-purpose complex, having less dollars on our debt is going to be much more attractive in negotiating terms to finance that building in the future.
So,
I support 2. Do you need a motion for it?
Not
No,
even-
ma'am. No, ma'am. We're just
Oh.
looking for support
Okay.
and I'm seeing head nods and so we can move
Alright.
forward with that.
Perfect. We'll bring it back to you next month.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Reports and compliments for the 2024 outlook.
All right, I'm gonna go quickly through the first couple slides because we went over time on that one. I'm gonna do my best to be done here by 7 and kind of get to the outlook slides, in which I'll be asking for a little bit of direction from the board on how you'd like to bring some of these items back to you. You guys already know what urban renewal is. It's a tool in Colorado that really allows municipalities to form a redevelopment agency or development arm of the city that they can go and maximize redevelopment or revitalization projects primarily through financing. Our urban renewal board is 13 people. We'll talk about this just in a minute, but you guys are familiar with all the people that are currently on the board. We have had a vacancy for about 14 months. Chairperson Douglas, as your role as mayor in the future, when you're prepared, the way that the state statute is written is that the mayor will appoint the 13th member. It is an at-large member. It can be anyone of your choosing, but they do not get compensation. There is no compensation for participating in the Urban Renewal Authority, which is why a lot of communities have trouble getting very qualified, at-large people because they want to be compensated if they're a banker or an attorney or something that's going to be utilizing those skills. The purpose statewide, right out of the state statute, is to eliminate, remediate, and prevent blighted conditions. So this is the definition of blight. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I've met with all of you and talked about this, but at the state level, basically what the state says is if you meet 4 of these criteria, you can be considered blight, or if you meet 3 of them with the property owner's consent, you can be part of an urban renewal plan, which basically just allows you to additional tools and finance that if you were outside the URA, you would not have access to. So how does a URA plan get created, right? First, there's an idea. The idea can come from the city council. It can come from an urban renewal authority. It can come from the public, but there's an idea to study an area. Then the urban renewal authority pays for a condition study, goes out and studies the area, determines whether or not there's prevalent of blight. Then you hold public hearings and public meetings to develop a plan, additional public hearings, adopt the plan and implement it. We've gone through that process with 2 of them in the last couple of years. We're going through that process right now. We're on the 72nd station. Why would you have urban renewal? What are some of the tools? I'm going to kind of skip the first couple. Those make a lot of sense. I really want to focus on the tax increment financing for a minute. So, why, right? You can do land acquisition, you can do redevelopment, you can do reinvestment programs with these dollars that are generated by the Urban Renewal Authority. But really one of the best benefits of an urban renewal authority is the ability to use tax increment financing. So let's talk about what tax increment financing is. So what the blue line here indicates, and if you gather anything from this presentation, I really would love for it to be this slide. So there is, in the blue area here, there is an area or part of the city that is struggling, that has seen lower property taxes and or sales taxes. Its base is that blue area. When the plan is created and then it lasts for 25 years, the orange area represents the increment. So the yellow area here is a case example that would show that there was a project that the Urban Renewal Authority entered into with a private developer on year 1. And that for this particular one here, this represents that the Urban Renewal Authority told that developer, you have X amount of dollars in infrastructure cost or other public benefits, and we're going to use the taxes that you generate above and beyond the base to help pay you back over a period of time. If you don't make those dollars, we have no commitment because the dollars aren't coming in. So this particular one, the URA would have said for a period of 10 years, we're going to share 50% of what you generate off your project alone. You cannot have taxes from outside the district. You cannot raise taxes inside the district. It is only the additional value that is created off your development. Then at the end of the period, and you'll see in the blue area, even while the URA is collecting the increment to reinvest in the project, the city, the county, the school district, all the taxing entities will always and forever retain the base that is collected, and that the URA will only get dollars above that base on an annual basis. That's the way that tax increment financing works. And then the green is at the end of 25 years, you have a project that's thriving, you have additional taxes. Yes, you had to wait 25 years, but now that project is cash flowing. Great example of that is the City Center project where the King Super is. That project just terminated on December 31st of last year. Now the city will keep and retain 100% of the sales tax. On an annual basis, the city for 25 years has taken the first $170,000 every single year. And then the increment on top of that went back to help with development costs. Now that project's expired. So now the city's going to start getting about $400,000 to $470,000 a year starting this year. So that's kind of how it works. For a period of 25 years, those taxes were pledged back to the project to help the developer with about $1.5 million in infrastructure costs on the city's right of way. And as a result, we committed those. So any questions about tax increment financing? Okay.
One quick thing, you can negotiate a lower time, so you can
Yes.
actually, well, even though there is a 25-year period, you can negotiate that maybe only the URA collects 15 years of that as opposed to the full 25. So it's all very dependent upon the projects that you're supporting within an area.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Since King Supers is part of URA and then how it was set up, it really didn't revalorize that area. It just got worse. And that was a problem with it in that area is it didn't uplift that structure. So you see a declining area and they're receiving that money, but they weren't putting any money back in. So I think going forward, we're gonna have any kind of URA projects. It has to really show value to the area it's impacting.
Absolutely.
Because it actually made it look worse. And then it detracted from what it's supposed to be with those funds, right? Now, of course, the season received money, but now we have to go in and make improvements that they weren't made before. So it's gonna cost us more money.
And I don't wanna, I'm not, right, looking at 25 years in hindsight, there were some probably opportunities when negotiating the TIF agreement with the private developer on looking what I call community benefits. And what are those community benefits that could be applied back by the developer into, and it's also you have to look at the size of the area in which you're creating in a district. When you get to, there's two very different type of districts. You've got a project, right? My High Greyhound Park is a blend of a project, which is just a defined area. The Sand Creek landfill, which is to become warehousing in the southern industrial area off of IV 48. That's a project district. It's one developer, it's one idea of a development. Whereas Mahi Greyhound Park and 72nd are very much a district-wide approach where you have a number of different land uses that can be located within it and thinking about the benefits that are going back into that area and thinking about that just not programmatically, but also from an infrastructure standpoint. 9 times out of 10, not a lot of people are negotiating or thinking about those community benefits while negotiating that TIF agreement about what are you doing to get back to the community, because as things rise, hopefully in Mahi Greyhound Park, it's also going to be able to create some of those connected areas and opportunities for the developments on the fringe. But you won't see that until you start to see some of the application of the points that we're negotiating.
Right. Okay.
But you raise a good point.
Yeah, and I just, I don't wanna blame on this, but Dick's Sporting Park was another thing too, you know. There's negotiations that went on then. Nothing has been produced as far as, you know, an incentive to build, right? Yeah.
The handshake agreement did not work well 20 years ago with that one. Absolutely.
That was.
Yeah, the same thing happened with Pinecrest. Lifetime project. You know, the investor, after 25 years, it was no longer lucrative for him. Sold it to the housing authority, city, whatever. But the people who live there living really substandard living, because they never put more money back into it to keep it up. And, you know, so we see the same thing happen over and over again. It can't. Our citizens deserve better.
Yeah, I would tell you that outside of the Urban Renewal Authority, there are a lot of programs statewide that allow inspections and better enforcement and compliance with a lot of these types of projects. And we'd love, you know, as a city to look holistically at other programs to make sure that in 25 years, whether it's an urban renewal project or outside, that there's a standard, community-wide standard on, we have an expectation.
Or a commitment to keep reinvesting, not just taking all the money and running.
So as far as your responsibility, yes, sir.
Sorry, I just wanted to kind of piggyback off of something you said for community benefits. URA implies kind of community and benefits or some type of community oversight. Is there something that we can start involving that? Because a lot of this focuses so much on retail, but retail doesn't necessarily revitalize that space. So how can we have a quality community to where we're not just focusing on the economic gain, but literally the quality of the community benefits?
I have a slide at the end to talk about that. So one of the things we attempted to do about a year and a half ago was to start to talk about strategic planning. And the fact is that a lot of the times over the URA's history, which is over 40 years old, we formed in 1978. there hasn't been a whole lot of underwriting or as you guys have mentioned, agreements that give us any sort of authority on day two to go in and make sure that it's being operated properly. As far as strategic planning goes, we tried to start it about a year and a half ago. At that time, we were meeting at 11 o'clock at night and infrequently. And so one of the things I'd like to bring back to you tonight at the end of this presentation is you get your feedback on your expectations to be involved in strategic planning, because Jason and I are ready to move forward. We feel like we have a good grasp of what your expectations are, but we didn't want to get too far cart before the horse if the URA board expected to be heavily involved in that, or really what your expectations were to lay out, when we're evaluating a project, what evaluation criteria is beneficial to you. So we have some ideas at the end of this presentation to share.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about equity protections,
Sure.
equity priorities, but community be involved throughout the whole thing. Because I always hear from community, we're not involved, so we're asked to be the checkbox and the right. So I just want to make sure that throughout the process, there can be some type of community. I know that there's already a lot of community outreach, but that maintenance of an advisory board or a council, those make all the difference to have that quick reaction from community too. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. So this map here is a map of the city and it shows the urban renewal areas. What I want to point out here is that they're all pretty much, not all pretty much, they are all in the southern core part of the city. Just based on the definition of urban renewal, it's not intended for greenfields or farmlands or undeveloped areas that are too expensive. They're really to give a competitive advantage to properties that have already gone through the development cycle and are now high vacancy rates, high crime rates, high code enforcement areas where developers don't want to go touch them because of the complexities and the cost to redevelop land. You'll see here the city center was 1998, Prairie Gateway, which is also known as Victory Cross, was 2005. The downtown Derby area is 2007. Mile High Greyhound Park was 2018, and the Sand Creek Business Area was approved in 2022. Each of those have a 25-year clock. I'm going to go through these very quickly so we can get to the slides, the outlook slides. But as we indicated, City Center started 2018. It terminated December of last year, so that is no longer a URA project. So now all those funds that were coming in and being shared between the developer and the city will now 100% go to the city. What the city got out of that, if you'll see the screen here, the developer did come in and at their cost do over $1.5 million worth of infrastructure improvements to the city right away as part of this project. So that is why the URA said, well, we will commit to give you X amount of dollars on an annual basis to help with the cost of the parkway and the intersection at the along 62nd. So there were about $1.5 million of improvements that the city did request the private developer to do offsite. Prairie Gateway, Victory Crossing. You guys probably all know the history, but America was attacked, Pearl Harbor, 1942, or December 41. 1942, the United States came in and bought over 50,000 acres of land in the arsenal and created it. It was where they did munitions testing and gases and other weapons to use for the war. When the war was over, the U.S. government leased those facilities to pesticides and chemical manufacturers, which was actually worse than the gases and chemicals the United States government was producing to kill people on that property. It has a long storied history of contamination, but the federal government did between 1980 and late 90s spend over $2.1 billion cleaning the area. And what our records have indicated is that there's never been any manufacturing or contaminants on the land that the city bought. So the city in 2004 bought 917 acres of land, entered into multiple agreements with Stan Kroenke, Kroenke Sports Entertainment, the Kroenke Group, and several other Kroenke organizations to talk about the development of the soccer stadium and then the development of the subsequent land around there that didn't happen. So you'll note here that in addition to the soccer stadium and the city dedicating land to Adams 14 to build the high school and the fire department building their facility, there was also supposed to be 600,000 square feet of commercial, but there was never any agreements tying the developer to actually move forward with those. The developer determined that it wasn't financially feasible, and that was about 20 years ago. So, we are now in a position where we are moving forward, building that relationship with the developer. We've done the Rocky Mountain Real Estate Challenge out there, and we've really gathered a lot of interest in and around the site over the last 12 months, just showing the owner that we do want to be partners in the development out here. The Derby Business District, so back in the 1890s, the Burlington Railroad built a train depot and a post office in Derby, and that formed the town of Derby. Around World War II, it became a very quaint downtown area. It became really the center for all the residents that were moving to Commerce City for their jobs in the arsenal. And there was a roller skating rink, there was the grocery store, there was a lot of activities and things to do. That really started going downhill around the 1980s and 90s. There was a lack of investment, both private and publicly. The city adopted a sub-area plan in 2006 that said, this is what we want Derby to be. Adopted a URA plan in 2009 to help implement that plan. One of the things that's very attractive about Derby right now, there is interest in Derby. There's been a notably a lack of investment in Derby. Between the Urban Renewal Authority and the Public Works staff, I think there's been a huge cooperation in really investing in Derby, fixing sidewalks and curbs and gutters and adding the parklet and doing a better job maintaining the landscape. Derby is starting to be talked about in a very different light than it was even 2 and 3 years ago. One of the things that Jason and I will be bringing to you in the very near future to obtain direction is that we have about $1.2 million cash right now. The URA does in an account. We've had urban renewal in Derby for 14 years. We haven't spent a whole lot of dollars. We've been collecting dollars. So we'd like to understand more from the Urban Renewal Authority on how you want to use those dollars. And I have a slide for that in the future. But we have the 1.2 million. We're generating right now about $150,000 in tax increment on an annual basis. So just real quick how that works. The base in Derby was established in 2009. Sales tax only, no property tax. The city and the other taxing entities still collect 100% of all property taxes. The way that it was negotiated is that in 2009, the city said, we're going to keep the first $151,000 in sales tax every year to put in the general fund, and whatever sales tax can be collected above that 151,000, the URA will get for a period of 25 years. So over the past 14 years, we've accumulated well over $1 million, but after what we've spent on an annual basis, we have about $1.2 million in cash that we'd love to hear from the Urban Renewal Authority. Land acquisition is something we can look into. There's several strategic properties that Jason I'd like to bring to your attention. We'd like to talk about infrastructure, and we've identified through Public Works and through talking with the utility providers that there are millions of dollars of infrastructure repairs. Do we want to take that money and put it towards the infrastructure budget? Or lastly, do we want to supplement economic development initiatives and be able to use those 1.2 in future revenues to be able to work with small businesses to maybe loan those dollars or to allow more catalyst funds to invest in existing and new businesses in Derby? So that is something that we are looking for, as we develop what our regular meeting schedule might look like, to bring that presentation, receive direction from the board on how you want us to come back to you with a strategy to invest the $1.2 million that we have sitting in the bank, plus future revenues for Derby. Mile High Greyhound Park. Again, I'm going to go really quick over this one. We're going to go actually to some slides about pictures to talk about what's happened out there in the last 12 months. Tract A and Tract B, about 12 acres of land that the Urban Renewal Authority still owns. Tract A, we are currently working with Davis Partnership Architects and Gruen Associates on the feasibility study and conceptual drawings to bring back to the board in July of this year to obtain direction on how big of a building and what partners do you want us to have in the building on Tract A. Tract B, we currently have under contract with DPC companies out of Denver. They have a site plan for about 35,000 square feet of retail that we are currently taking through the zoning and permitting process. Once the property is zoned, DPC companies intends to close on the property, purchase it, and start the retail development. And then one of the big accomplishments out here in 2023 was January 31st. We sold 2 acres of land to a private developer out of Wichita, Kansas. There is absolutely no subsidies tied to that deal or kickbacks or forgiveness of any taxes. That was a market rate deal. The developer came in and they built a 122-room hotel. Estimated construction value of that was about $18 million investment in the project. And that project will start to generate, starting this year, 2024, about $300,000 a year in increment between the property and the sales tax, that then the Urban Renewal Authority can decide how they want to invest that back into the development. But again, there are no subsidies whatsoever to the hotel developer. So 100% of those property taxes and sales taxes will be split between the Urban Renewal Authority and the other taxing districts. Any questions on any of that with tract A and B?
So just let you know, it's 7:01.
Okay, well then I'm gonna skip through all these just real quick. Again, our role in the hotel was not subsidies or kickbacks. We did a lot of infrastructure investment out here, so we took a lot of the proceeds from the hotel and we reinvested into Tract B, and we built 63rd Avenue. We put in a lot of the infrastructure that then allowed us to market and sell Tract B retail. And I'm gonna go really quickly through this. As far as residential goes, the 68 townhomes as part of the row homes is under construction. You'll see earlier in the year, mid-year, now they have residents that have moved into that development. The empowerment project was started and finished construction in 2023. Here's the empowerment, 50 units, true affordability. It is the 70% subsidy and 9% LIHTC deal in coordination with our housing authority. We do have a lot of vouchers that the housing authority does give to this project. Going quickly, our first retail establishment did open up. Community Uplift, it's Cup partnership. It's a coffee shop. They anticipate about $2,000 a day in revenue. At the end of the year, we expect this to generate about $25,000 in tax increment financing that will then go to the Urban Renewal Authority, and you will choose how you want to invest that back in the project. Right now, it is currently expected to be invested in the Tract A development of the institutional anchor property. Moving forward, Sand Creek, just a quick update on this project. The developer that was under contract and moving forward on this they've had, the way that they describe it, a divorce in their company. And Outrigger Industrials was created as a result of that divorce, and they are now the developer, and they are working with the state and the seller on changing all the documents over so that they can move forward, no longer CA Ventures. Now Outrigger Industrials, the new developer in that. Yes, sir.
There are very few things I'll ask you to rename, but Sand Creek is gonna be one every time.
Yes.
So, not just that, but Sand Creek Greenway, if there's any way that going forward, we can, if we have to put it in council, just because we can rename it with that type of sensitivity that we talked about for indigenous communities before, I would really like to.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think other commissioners have made that in the past. But absolutely. Accomplishments, these were as part of your packet. So if you want to go over these at your own time, that'd be great. We're just running late on time right now. Want to talk about the outlook, just because tonight is the night. If there's anything that you're thinking about that should be added to this, or questions you have or feedback you have, Jason and myself would love to hear that tonight as we're laying out the 2024 outlook. As far as general administration, staff would really like to work with you on identifying a regular meeting day and time. The last feedback we had was to add all of the external members' calendars to it. So I have a slide here where we've incorporated the external members' calendars to be sensitive to their availability. The 13th member, again, we've gone just over a year without that 13th member being filled. That is a responsibility of the mayor, if and when the mayor is ready to move forward, to appoint the 13th member as an at-large member, to adapt a charter. One of the things that is also part of this presentation, if you haven't had time to review it, I'd encourage you to review it, is last year as we were starting the strategic planning process, we kept getting that item removed from the agenda. So we put it out as a survey. We had 3 of the 13 members at the time respond to that survey, and we were able to create some draft missions and goals and objectives from that we will chat about during this presentation, or we can bring it back at a later date. But again, as soon as we firm up what the purpose, objectives, mission, and goals are for the Urban Renewal Authority, Jason and I are very confident that we can go forward and draft a strategic plan with a 5-year short-term work program. As far as Prairie Gateway, it's really just supporting Cronky throughout this year. There's a lot of activities occurring that we'll talk about in later presentations. Mile High Greyhound Park has a lot of activity. We are completing the feasibility study and conceptual design to bring back to the board in July of this year. We will take that direction in July to start negotiating with our various partners who have expressed interest to date in being part of that building. We'll have to amend the Mile High Greyhound Park plan unit by August of this year to be able to sell the land to DPC companies for the retail development. Track B develops, so as Track B develops into a retail development, we're gonna have to develop an association for the retail developer. We're gonna prepare the last 6 acres of land for development through the zoning, collaborating with CDOT and the city on the transportation project, completing and delivering the 68 units of C3 row homes, and supporting Del West as they move forward and anticipate breaking ground on the 240 unit Tract F fall of this year. These are for Derby, where we have a reinvestment strategy to bring back to the board. We have supported the new developer of the old landfill and redeveloping that with about 900,000 square feet of Class A industrial space, and then the 72nd stamp plan. I believe that city council has moved that, or I think in June is when that meeting is scheduled to come back and receive direction from the city council on the boundary for the 72nd light rail URA area. So with that, if you're prepared to give any feedback on these tonight, that'd be great, or look at it at your leisure. We can talk about the next meeting. And then also as part of the presentation in your packet, we did update this slide here to show all of the external members of the URA and what their commitments are. Really shows that if you want no commitments, Wednesdays, first and third Wednesdays are your best meeting nights. Outside of that, probably the fourth Wednesday. There's also opportunities on Thursdays and Fridays, but really targeting the Wednesdays is probably going to be the appropriate meeting if you're prepared to give direction. And then the last thing I wanted to call out again, we had 3 of the 13 members provide direction about a year ago on purpose, mission, visions, objectives. And generally speaking, this is part of the presentation, but I know we're already about 2 or 3 minutes over. Whether or not you're prepared to talk about this tonight or at a later meeting, certainly up to you. Yes, ma'am. Oh, sorry.
The Derby section, it says in reinvestment strategy.
Yes, ma'am.
What about a vision? I think we should revisit the vision. It was sort of a Coogie's 1950s thing.
Yes.
And maybe it needs to be something else that reflects the diversity in Commerce City.
And we meet, so just for your own information, between economic development, community development, and myself, we meet regularly to talk about Derby. There's a lot of overlap there, but absolutely, some of the themes that I have written down as far as Derby are the PUD zoning is a little complicated and preventive as far as some opportunities. The design guidelines are very difficult. Lack of investment in infrastructure over the past 40 years and what infrastructure looks like. Code enforcement, just community standards and getting the property owners out there to buy into, if we're going to maintain our areas better, our expectations for you. Homeless encampments, maintenance of public spaces. So there's a lot of things that as a city and URA, we can be focusing on Derby, and vision and design guidelines are a huge part of that.
And I would
And who
say,
determines the design guidelines?
City council.
so city council determining both the vision and the design guidelines. So you have to think about yourselves in this capacity as board, as the implementers of the decisions that the council has made in the formation of the district, the roles and the responsibilities and the duties that have been identified or the type of developments that would be identified. So it's very appropriate for council to take a step back, look at the existing PUD zoning, because even the PUD zoning really also reaffirms the Googie architecture. It also then discusses the type of uses, the limitations on uses, and also the design guidelines that run in parallel with those two, all come from city council. So under that hat, it'd be the appropriate way of going back underneath the hood and redetermining what can be done, because yes, ma'am.
I see a study session in our future,
I'm
or
not-
the city council's future.
Yes.
I'm not Karnak the Great, but I would say yes, I would agree with you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Just going, so two points. One is, I appreciate the conversation around Derby, and I also want to just put out there that the idea that we, I think revisiting makes sense, but also there's this tension around, we spent a lot of time and effort and funding on 2 plans for Derby, and it's still chugging along. And so anything that we can do to speed this up is needed for the residents, because the longer we keep waiting and over processing. So anyway, just any way we can figure out the middle ground. We're looking at what the community stakeholders said, because it was a comprehensive plan. right? I mean, engagement at El Jardines, a lot of conversation, like everyone came together. And so how do you we need to move forward with what we have in addition to additional comments without stalling it. Because it has to move forward. And one of my frustrations is that we had the Hispanic Heritage big event and, we still have we filled in the bricks, right, and Derby, but now there's still, I mean, when it rains, it's still the same kind of condition. And I know, I've seen the effort of like putting a new, the signage, or not signage, but the new landscaping and and I think the improvement's amazing, but it's also like, it's like a patchwork. And so I'd love to figure out how to move forward for our residents. The other point I want to make is just, I'm okay with Wednesday. I think this dovetails into that level of commitment that needs to take place for the foreseeing future around urban development or URA, because we need to dedicate a lot of time into like really invest into the heart of our city for our residents, for our future students, for current students. And so Wednesday works for me if this is what we decide, but I think it's just time. And going back to one of the questions board member Chacon mentioned around just the safety piece of it, and the idea of like investment, something to bring to light is that, Bill, you weren't here, right? We didn't have a dedicated URA director to do the follow-up with like the King Soopers City Center. And so I'm happy to have that. I want to maximize that time while you're here. And so we can move forward, because even the city center, we should have more signage around. This is the heart of our city for our residents. And so now's the time, but that's.
Board Member Douglas?
Yes, I'd like to confirm what Wednesday night out of the month 27J holds their school board meetings, because I like to attend the school board meetings and I know they've moved it to Wednesday. Trying to find it online. And I
It should be
can't
the
find
similar to us, the second and the fourth.
it.
Wednesday.
I
If they do a study session or their board, it should be the second Wednesday.
Yeah.
So that's when we
They
have
just
our,
moved it. They moved it from a Tuesday night. to
yeah, it'll be the
Wednesday.
Wednesday. It's usually, all of our Board of Education meetings are usually the second week.
Second, yeah, I just wanted to confirm it. So since we're on this, because that's important.
It was added, Board of Education was added here at 5:30 PM on the second one.
Right, but that's for
That's for
Adams 14, because, because they're part of the URA. 27J is not a part of the URA.
That's right.
It's on the third Wednesday of every
Third
month.
Wednesday, third Wednesday. Okay.
This 27J's.
27J's Board of Education meeting, the third Wednesday. Cause it'll conflict if we change our DAC one. Will conflict if we do it on the third.
So 27J would only be offered an opportunity to participate if we had a URA.
No, I'm just saying that I don't want to pick between which meeting I go to.
Oh, I
See
understand.
what-
I understand.
See what I'm saying? Okay, thank you.
How about EPAC? I don't see EPAC on there.
Oh, EPAC moves all over the place. It's on a Thursday this time. This coming Thursday.
I'm sorry, that one is not on here.
Yeah, sometimes it's been on a Monday too. And during this URA, is there, he talks of retreats?
We had talked about a retreat last year, and it was during the strategic planning, as we were talking about getting. This wasn't that well received as far as having as far as staff goes, speaking for Jason, who stepped out, we would love to do a retreat.
Yeah, I think we should, because we're gonna get this feasibility study, instead of making a rush to decide, we should really think about this, because it has an impact for 5 years. So I would push to have a retreat for URA somehow in the summer or so.
Do you want to wait until the results are back in July and then maybe share them as part of a retreat?
Yeah.
Something we can definitely do.
Everybody else want to weigh in? And as far as the schedule, it was suggested everybody submit what they want to do. Can you do a doodle or so
Absolutely.
for the Wednesdays? That way we can all take part.
We can take, we'll make some recommendations and then we'll put it out as a survey and give a couple options and report back next month on what those were.
Good?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that. Oh, yeah, I think for this one. Yeah.
We have a Jensen cost.
Ready whenever you are, Mayor, to reconvene.
Okay. All right, yeah, presentations for high hazard zones. Is this the chief here?
Both Chief and Commander Malley.
Okay. Dave Lowry. Chief out there?
Yes.
There he is.
You're up, sir.
Dave Maurer
Okay,
here.
thank you.
He's gonna lead this and I'm gonna chime in here shortly.
You wanna sit here? No, sir. There's nobody else. You good? Hard to, sit back here. How are you? You're right now. Yeah.
Good evening. I'm Dave Maurer. I'm the Special Operations Commander for the Police Department. I'm going to do a brief presentation here, reference to high hazard zones that we had recently began in the Police Department. Real quick background. On December 4th of last year, we adopted Ordinance 11-1202H under the Municipal Ordinance reference authorizing the city to establish our high traffic routes. This is the language for the ordinance that can be found specific under the Model Traffic Code. Essentially, it just states that the city can designate some streets and highways within our jurisdiction based upon a number of different factors as high hazard zones. And subsequently, as a result of that, any person that commits a moving violation within those high hazard zones is subject to twice the fines of whatever the applicable moving violation would be. The police department identified and recommended 4 different zones to be established as high traffic routes. Resolution 2023-131, we did establish these 4 routes, 2 of which on Highway 2, 2 of them on Tower Road. How we identified those areas in 2022, we began running an audit of areas within the city that were producing the highest number of moving violations. These are the 4 areas that came up that had the highest number of a variety of different moving violations where summonses were issued. Again, notating that this doesn't include any warnings or traffic stops, just specifically tickets that were issued during that time period. Continuing on into 2023 up to September 30th, at the time that we made our recommendations, those areas that we identified either had consistent or in some cases significantly increased number of traffic violations during that time period. Real quick, this is just the distinction we wanted to make between the high hazard zones and the school zones within our city. School zones are established through state law, through traffic, the traffic code and CRS. Specifically, our high traffic zones are areas that have to be established within the city specifically to the criteria that we've set up in accordance with the ordinance in 11-1202. Once we were able to identify those zones, we began working with Public Works to start establishing what our signage was going to look like. We got our direction again through the traffic code through CRS, which basically gives whatever specifications for those signs to stay consistent with statewide uniformity. As a result of that, we developed 2 signs initially that were going to be placed prior to the entrance of the high traffic zones and indicating as people were exiting the high traffic zones. Just to make a note, since that time, we've also designed and started implementing a number of signs that we put within the zones that simply just indicate to drivers that they're still in those areas, just in case they're to enter through another egress. Again, the language there that spells out where those signs are placed prior to and exiting the high hazard zones. Then we begin coordinating with records and municipal court staff to make sure that we are ready to go as far as having the ordinance implemented into our handheld ticket writing systems. The courts were prepared for the increase of the fines, and that records was able to start working on those as well. We then began a social media program where we started working with both the police department and the city's communication departments to start putting the message out. We had numerous interviews with a lot of the local medias. And we also placed out message boards in different locations around the zones, indicating to people that within 2 weeks, we would start taking enforcement action in the high hazard zones. And then I'm going to pass this over to the chief for our last 2 slides.
And just to touch on that, to wrap up on the high hazard zones, and then if you have questions, we can certainly address any of those. We did begin messaging that a few weeks ago with the variable messaging boards. The 18th, those zones went active. If you've been up and down Highway 2 or Tower, you've seen those zones. If you followed our Facebook page, you've seen some of the reactions we've got, very positive appreciation for those zones and the enforcement efforts that are there. And I drive Highway 2 quite frequently, and it's certainly anecdotal, but it does seem like for portions of my drive, the speeds are a little bit slower. I'm not passed at the same speed that I was last month. So I think it's having an impact. With that being said, one of the things in a previous council meeting we were asked to also address here is the off-road vehicles, motorcycles, and ATVs. We're going to do that here in a minute, but I just want to give an opportunity for any questions on the high hazard zones before we move on.
Councilmember Teeter?
I don't think you can put a study together on judging on speeds on Highway 2, because I believe the speeds on Highway 2 are way too low. And, back in the day, it was 55 going from 120th to 80th Avenue, and then it was 45 to Highway 2. Now, I realize we've got some more road in that area now. But, so I'm not suggesting that we go back to that totally, but it's justifying because of all the tickets given. The tickets are given because the speed limit's too low. And if you talk to anybody that lives up, not anybody, but if you talk to a lot of the people that live up north, they're just frustrated with it. It's just way too low. And the road is now wider than it used to be. It's just a lot safer road, and we lowered the speed limit. It doesn't make good sense.
Well, unfortunately, I think we have the good fortune of the police department to merely enforce the laws that are set. We didn't pick that speed. There's people who are smarter than us who look at the traffic studies, and there are other applicable laws. So from our perspective, we just enforce it. And we do have some, historically have had some really horrific accidents along Highway 2, and some auto pedestrian injuries earlier this year and late last year as well. So I think there's a lot of contributing factors, but I'm gonna punt on your observation because, we don't really have a say in what the speed limit is.
Well, going back to what you just said, on some of those accidents, the one that I believe caused it to be lowered was the 3 kids that was in car seats that was thrown out of their car. And, they all died. They're little babies. But it just, so they said, we got to do something. Well, let's lower the speed limit. Well, you can't blame it on the road design. You can blame it on the parents or whoever put them into that car seat that didn't strap them in. That's what the problem was. You can't justify lowering the speed limit because of somebody don't know how to strap a car seat in. And same thing with the jogger getting run over on Highway 2, which was the firefighter's wife. That was an inattentive driver that, said he was texting or he just wasn't watching what he was doing. You can't blame it on the speed.
City Manager,
Thank you, Mayor. Just so that I know council's aware, but just kind of to re-daylight a couple of projects that we're working on. There's a median project that we're already currently looking at along the stretch of Highway 2. Obviously, that's to help improve the safety of both northbound and southbound traffic throughout the day. And obviously that there's some aesthetics that also come into play when you're thinking about median treatments that we're looking at. So there'll probably be a reexamination of our speed limits when we're thinking about medians, given that there'll be a height level of protection. That'll just be, a perfunctory aspect that we look at as part of that study. In addition, we are also doing a corridor study that will look at also not just the medians, but looking at the multimodal improvements that can be done to Highway 2 in conjunction with improving safety. So those are operating in parallel that you all will be able to have a chance to weigh in on and to be able to look at the findings and results and to give us direction on what we can do or should be doing across the broad spectrum of traffic safety, speed limits, and multimodal provisions for our residents.
So I beg to differ on this speed limits. I just see so many pedestrians and bicyclists and I remember all those horrific accidents as well. Firefighters' wife that she was just jogging. She had 5 kids. They have 5 kids. So yeah, to me, I mean, people are, whatever you set the speed limits out, they're gonna go faster than that, no matter what. That's just human nature. They're gonna do it. So you raise the speed limits. I think you're gonna have more problems. And I travel that road all the time. Yeah, it takes a little bit longer, and I gotta remember that from Quebec to, a little bit further down Highway 2, I've gotta slow down through there. And I just do because I know that I'm supposed to. And yeah, so to me, human safety is much more important than somebody getting to where they need to be faster. So that's my 2 cents.
So thanks for coming back and sharing the high hazard zones and the conversation and the history. I appreciate it. I just a couple questions, and maybe for city manager, but also for you all as well. And just based on some like our neighboring cities, they break the zones by wards. And looking at our 4 zones, is it possible to look at in the future? Does this support the different wards across our city, or all these in one ward, right? Does that make sense? Or I'm sorry.
I think the criteria that we have to establish any of these is fairly straightforward. One of the reports I get from my crime analyst every month is, where are our top 5 accident locations and where are we doing some of these things? So as circumstances evolve, we're continually looking at problem intersections or places of this nature. And we can certainly explore that, but I do think it's important that it be data driven. Yeah. And we need to have the underlying information that supports what a high hazard zone is, but certainly it's not limited to just this.
Okay. So and I agree having data driven conversations and decisions. Just finding that balance of like, how do you make sure this is equitable across the city, right? And so like if you're all in ward 3 and 4, because there's a lot of traffic there, but I'll be curious if there's like spaces or opportunities for like ward 1 and 2 to say, okay, maybe they don't meet the same speed threshold, but like we all know like there's like different challenges there, either speed and or drag racing. So I put out, maybe that's a city manager discussion, like how do we look at the data and then maybe look at the criteria to make sure it's spread across our city at some point. Not tonight, of course, but like.
Yeah, I think you're gonna get an introduction to an opportunity that can help inform the high hazard zones with the presentation at the end of the evening, which is the citywide safety action plan. Like I said, it's gonna be looking at a very diverse way of components in the scope of how to think about street safety, road safety, pedestrian vehicular conflicts, and how to be able to reduce those comprehensively, holistically. That there may be some trickle down and or some waterfall into high hazards criteria that can be updated as we go forward. And there's nothing saying that as we start to see other issues as they come, as we're working through one process that can help inform any interim high hazard zones. I think what you're always going to get from us is that we're going to be willing to come to the table to take into considerations, other things that start to come about, because one thing will lead to another.
Okay, and it actually goes to my second question, around, so I appreciate the looking through the lens of how do we, look at the data, look at the criteria. But I'm also a firm believer, just like, how do we get the community involved, right? And I know some other neighborhood cities, they provide, some level of investment around like, in form of a neighborhood watch, or they put together a committee for, they call it calming traffic committees, where neighborhoods can have someone who lead. I say neighborhood watch because only one person takes the lead to fill the application. And they have committee members that help kind of say, we want to take ownership of slowing this down, and the city supports that around whether it's funding to help them have gatherings to talk about it, it's education. So they bring together different people, and it's led by the community. So they bring together different folks and talk about education, about speeding. But then that can lead to, like, if you do want some more data or engineering or studies, it's more led and it's informed by the community. Is that something we've thought about with the safety action zones, or is that something that's separate from what we can do? And I say that because I know we can't have high hazard zones across every city intersection, but how do we engage communities if they want to do that type of, like, okay, we want to take ownership of our block, right?
I think it's a great question. It's definitely something that and I think, like I said, we're coming at you at a perfect time as we're about to kick this off with the safety action plan, that there's maybe some opportunities there for us to think about redefining community engagement at a level of not just being informed and engaging, but trying to collaborate. And I think we'll get a sense from both our public works team, Jeff Maxwell, as well as our consultant, to be able to kind of dive into some ideas or thoughts that they may have as they go through that process.
Okay, and also with C3 dollars, is that something that we can provide funding for if we wanted to, as we talk about it, like have neighborhood involvement? Of course, the application process, and they'll have to set up their own neighborhood committees, but saying we have resources to help you reach out to your neighbors, whether it's, whatever, signage or cost, whatever, is that something that will live in C3 funding or 2K funding or neither?
Hard to say.
Okay.
And I don't want to say one fund is more targeted than the other. Obviously, there's a lot of, I'll call it different priorities that we need to target with C3. And obviously we have different funds that we need to target with 2K. And I think really, and like I said, the team will jump into it at the end of the night. I think as we kind of get some of this initial feedback, let us go back and do some due diligence to give you some well thought out approaches.
Okay.
And what necessary funding sources may be required to support that. And knowing that we've got budget coming up, at least gives us some opportunity to think about in the upcoming years, because right, this is not going to be an overnight delivery, right? We're talking about something that's going to take the better part of the remainder of this year and leading into next year for us really kind of get this established with the safety action plan, which can inform high hazards, traffic calming policy, broad spectrum of things that we're trying to do around our community and our city. That we may be able to have an opportunity there to talk about as well, some funding sources and needs to support.
Okay, and would that help the police department as well? Like if you had communities or like we identify, this is something we've been seeing and we're able to share, you have points of contact where they can share with you directly some of those concerns?
I would say it would, and the Citizens Public Safety Advisory Board, we meet monthly, and one of the things that they have consistently tried to do is increase neighborhood watch programs, and that is overwhelmingly successful, engaging with the broader community in a lot of ways along those lines. We're still exploring options, but any level of engagement, we're happy to jump on that bandwagon, to lead it, to get behind it, or build from it.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you very much. So Highway 2 is, the area that you have for Highway 2 is Ward 1, and then Tower is Ward 4. My experience tonight driving Highway 2 was a truck in the left lane that was going 45, and the truck had probably 20 vehicles behind it. And nobody was passing the truck. I thought that was pretty good. On the other hand, yesterday I was on Tower Road and I was going 45 and people were passing me easily going 15 miles faster than I was, 50 miles an hour faster than I was. What is our situation in terms of patrol officers for giving tickets for, how many do we have? The social media, we've seen one highlighted for the work that he does, but do you only have one person giving tickets, or how many do you have?
Well, any of our officers can give tickets in their time that is not allocated in other ways. Of course, we have a lot of calls for service and most of the time those routine patrol officers are handling other calls. But our traffic unit does have 3 officers right now and a sergeant who can be, the 3 officers can be on, they're all motorcycle certified and they can be on a motorcycle or in a car and they're spread throughout the city.
So you do have one then assigned directly to traffic?
We have 3 assigned directly to traffic.
Okay, 3 assigned to traffic for a very large area to cover. And those 3, are they 24 hours a day or they work certain hours?
No, they work certain hours.
Okay, so we don't have 3 on the street at the same time.
There is some overlap depending on their assignment and their work days, but typically what we like to see is with our traffic folks is to deploy them at the hours that make sense for more traffic enforcement. So the morning rush hour, the evening rush hour, in addition to writing tickets, they also take accident reports. So the peak times for those types of calls for service is when we try to have our traffic officers on the road.
Yes, that would be true, except during rush hour, you can barely move on Tower Road. So nobody will be speeding. There won't be a danger of somebody getting a double ticket on Tower Road. Do you need more officers on the road doing traffic?
I would not ever say no to more officers. We certainly, yes, we could use more staff, but I understand there's a lot of complexity to that particular issue.
A lack of what?
There's a lot of complexity to that issue, not just from a recruiting and retention standpoint, from hire to the time they could even write a ticket takes about a year to get someone through the academy and through our training. So any officer I hire today is a year away. And the practical applications or implications of asking for a lot more officers to be hired is that's city funds that are allocated to pay salaries that aren't really going to begin producing anything for the city or for my department for a year. And I still have meetings with my colleagues and other department heads who have their needs as well. So it is a balance, but the short answer is I certainly do. I would never say no to more officers.
Okay, and in my experience on city council, we have always stepped up and offered more than was requested if that was necessary. So if it's a matter of making the high hazard zones actually work, I think that's something that would be worth discussing as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Douglas?
Have you considered making the 3rd lanes on where there's supposed to be turn lanes on Tower, but there's another left-hand turn on the other side of the intersection coming from the other way. People speed through those intersections all the time to beat the traffic. So they'll get in the turn lane, but they won't turn. And somebody's gonna get killed. And there's quite a few of those, and there's more proposed with the quick trip coming in. And I tried to bring that up as a major concern, and I was shot down on it, but.
Well, that is not an uncommon complaint. That is likely one of the reasons that those sections of Tower were identified as high hazard zones, because we do have our traffic officers out there frequently for just that maneuver where they pass you on the right and then get right over.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Chacon?
Is there any way that you could do radar enforcement, like where you could have an officer to help with that space to alleviate the need for workforce, but you could have a radar still kind of issuing those tickets? Is
I'm
that-
sorry, I can hardly hear you.
Sorry, a radar enforcement for those spaces on Highway 2 and Ford Tower, mainly Highway 2, frankly, because I'm fine with having lower speed limits. That might mean I might be getting one of those tickets because I'm a bird foot, but but that being said, I'm curious about radar.
Our traffic officers do use radar.
They do use radar?
Yes.
Is there any like for, I guess you got used to living in California to where it was aerial based.
Unmanned
Yeah.
radar vehicles, that's certainly something that we're looking at, which part of the adoption of the new model traffic code included changed language for AVIS, which allows us the option of more red light camera enforcement and photo radar being unmanned photo radar. So those are definitely things that we're exploring down the road.
Okay, because I've heard from community and other spaces to where they don't feel so patrolled, but it still meets certain requirements for data and then also seeing where the high hazard spaces are. Thank you.
Councilmember Dukes.
Thank you, Mayor. Same questions around just if you need more staff, need more technology. That's kind of the same questions I had, because yeah, our role is to look at the budget and making sure that we provide the resources needed, and that's such a critical need. But you said something that had me pause as well, because it takes about a year to get through academy before they actually are able to get enough training to get into the street. So that's something else I'd love to just learn more about. So that's a more process too, which is needed, right? We want the training for police, so.
So Andrew.
The chief and I have had this conversation and we've talked about, he's building out a plan for 2040 and looking at the growth of the city. As the city grows and the city will continue to grow, his police force in response needs to grow with that. And you've heard very tangentially high level, some of the issues that he has to deal with, right? A year to be able to get an individual through academy into the workforce, onto the street. And there's nothing saying that all of those individuals who enter the academy are going to come out of the academy to be able to provide that level of support. So one of the things that we are talking about, you more than likely will probably see in this upcoming budget discussion are alternative ways that can provide that same level of response in the community for different calls for service that may not necessarily require to have the actual bodies in the ground. And I have to get, tip my hat to the chief, really trying to push innovations, creativity to what's going to be pushed out to your way in your thought process. So it's something that we acknowledge and that we know needs to be discussed and needs to be supported.
I appreciate that. I had people reach out to me. I had posted about the EVs, but for the ATVs and all that. And about 8,500 people again. And they're all concerned. And they just called me up. One guy called me up as he ready to get in the shower, or somebody in my riding ATV up and down my wife trying to go to sleep, So I said, don't call me, call the police. Because I can't help you. So I appreciate you guys doing that because it is awareness. Frontier Village area, the second creek open space. There's a lot of traffic for ATVs and motorcycles. And can't be everywhere all the time, but just notification signs really help. Chambers Road's another place, high hazard zones. I'm sure it's maybe on a list in the future, but that is dangerous because people get to 120th and Chambers, and just like it was stated earlier, you got a left turn lane and you got a straight. They will actually turn right at the same time. It's safe to turn, but it's usually a lag in time of that light. When they turn, it's usually when that light's turning yellow and red, and they're actually turning from the middle lane, not from the safe lane on the left. So, like I said, I really appreciate you guys bringing this forward because it is a concern. And the fact that you indicated to have those vans there, whatever, that'd help as well. Because awareness is all we need. And when it comes to high speed on Highway 2, putting up those barriers, the linears or walls in the middle, because you guys are all the time on safety. I appreciate that. That's what people have to think about. When we lower speed, it's not to trap people, it's because of safety. I remember driving Highway 2, we had no shoulders. So when people were driving, they kind of drift, that back rail would slide and get caught in that rut, boom, they're inside the road, So making that even on both sides has been great. And so I'm looking forward to our last one that will bring all this together. So thank you for bringing this up because it's a problem and it's only gonna get worse. And you guys are addressing it the right way. I appreciate that.
Absolutely, and I'll just touch on this real quick. I know the off-road vehicles, the motorcycles, the ATVs, they are a huge impact on the quality of life. Having people watch them zip by their yards, it's a problem that we have in the south area. It's a problem that's up north. In fact, last fall, in the northern range, there were two boys who were on a four-wheeler and crashed in the back of a truck. And mom said, no, they had permission to be riding the four-wheeler around, but they weren't going fast. And the neighbor said, yeah, they were going awfully fast. And it is everywhere. One of the challenges for us, and if you saw our social media post, we did stop one of these last week. One of the challenges is oftentimes these people don't stop for police. And that is not something that we are willing to further risk life and limb for. Couple of practical issues that we encounter are just the violations that are involved. So let's say we stop a unlicensed ATV with an underage kid who doesn't have a driver's license at all. No driver's license, that's $35 fine and $11 surcharge. That's a traffic infraction. That doesn't rise to much of anything. If mom or dad lets a unlicensed minor drive, that's a $35 fine, $11 surcharge if they get a ticket. Unregistered vehicle, $75 fine, $25 surcharge. And these issues come about in a way that, while there's significant quality of life issues for folks, on the back end, the enforcement piece, I would say there's not a whole lot of deterrent there to prevent that behavior. If you're going to pay a $35 fine, $11 surcharge, your kids driving the ATV might be able to pull that out of their allowance or pocket change. Now, there are a couple of other practical applications. I already mentioned the fact that our pursuit policy would prohibit it. So if we try to stop them and they don't stop, they're just going to drive away. One of the ways, and the city manager alluded to using technology in some other ways, one of the ways that we're going to look at perhaps addressing these, because by the time we get one of these calls, it goes through AdCom dispatches it to an officer. There's already an all right amount of time that's gone by since whoever saw these people drive by. So by the time we get to the area, sometimes a significant amount of time has lapsed. We are looking at technology and use of drones and the ability. There's several programs out there that we could put someone in City Hall or in the northern substation, and a call like this were to come out, they could literally launch a drone and get eyes on wherever that vehicle is. Get some pictures of it, zoom in on it as it goes back to the house, and then we could pay a visit to mom and dad later. So there's some safe ways to do that. That drone also has some other applications for officer safety. I won't take up any more time talking about that tonight, but it's certainly not anything that is lost on us. Those quality of life issues are very important to the police department. As a practical matter, the incentive to not engage in that behavior just doesn't seem to be there right now with the fines that are in place for those violations as we encounter them. So,
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. And we talked about golf carts before. And a golf cart can be on the road as long as it has brakes and side mirrors, right? Which you're not going to find on an ATV. So is that a bigger ticket if you don't have, if you're not street legal, if you will?
It could fall into a number of different, depending on what it is, it could be classed in a number of different ways, but I cited these handful of violations right here as an example. None of them are anything that really rise to any level of deterrent. And a lot of the motorcycles or ATVs that we see out there, that while they're not necessarily street legal per se, they would fall into the unregistered vehicle class.
City Manager Rogers, we can increase the fees, right? The penalties.
I think that I'd have to have that conversation with the city attorney's office to make sure that you don't run afoul of things that may be in opposition to most recent reform at the state level. So
My assumption is if it's a penalty, not a fee, then it would require a revision to the relevant code provisions, which we could do.
Then maybe not having a street legal vehicle
Yes,
is
we
a
would
higher.
check to make sure that there's
Yeah.
nothing at the state level.
yeah, I can't say with any level of certainty that yes, these could go up without really looking at a number of different regulations, both at the local and the state level, and to make sure that there's no conflict or we get ourselves into certain issues.
Right.
Yeah. Or something else. You know, if street legal, if not being street legal is a worse ticket, then that could be employed.
Well, one more, make it quick.
I can understand the temptation. It
Councilmember
started during pandemic.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, just to piggyback on that, and I would love more conversations around it because, you know, especially for disproportionately impacted communities, we don't want to create this criminal record for a 16-year-old, put them in handcuffs, track them down and bring them down to the station over a $35 or $45 fine. So I get the tension, and it's something you said, a quality of life piece, as well as in some ways the destruction of like it starts to create a pathway. And so love to have more just conversations about how to do both without destroying the future of some of our youth, right? And creating a criminal record when it's not needed per se, but so love more discussion about it. But I appreciate you having this, you bringing the data and kind of sharing the perspective, because you're right, it's the no license, $35 deterrent. The opposite of that is you track them down, you chase them down, and it could be a loss of life, but also like the record, you know, it becomes more of a bigger issue for some of our youth in terms of, I mean, even $45, they may not be able to pay. And so that leads into a warrant and all those other steps. Thank you. Good discussion.
Thank you, Councilmember. Appreciate it. Well, thank you. That's great. You brought this forward to us because
Thanks.
it's a huge concern. Thank you.
Thanks. Excuse me, imagine I get up, you kids' heads.
Criminalize it, leave it.
All right, custodial services. This is update.
Yes, because yeah, I'm gonna get just the children.
Yeah, take it back.
Yeah.
I can share mine. Right, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Douglas, Mayor Pro Tem Noble, council members. I am Larry Assassin, Director of Public Works. Today, I'll be going over custodial services analysis update. Overview, the purpose, background, next steps, and questions at the end. The purpose is to provide an update on the assessment of the service delivery models for our custodial services. Just a little background, in June 2023, City Council instructed staff to assess the option of providing custodial services in-house in comparison to the city's current practice of contracted custodial services. Staff indicated that they would bring custodial services in-house for one city building, the Municipal Service Center, in early 2024, and report back and council in early 2024 about the effectiveness of the service delivery model. Next steps, in July 2024, staff will present options to City Council to bring custodial services in-house or continue providing services through external contract vendors. If City Council elects to bring custodial services in-house, staff will prepare for this transition over the next several months with anticipated start date of January 2025. If City Council elects to continue procuring custodial services through internal contract vendors, staff will issue a RFP for services with a start date of January 2025. The current contract custodial services will expire in 2024. In April, staff will present a resolution to extend this contract through December 2024. If awarded by City Council, this will provide a sufficient time for staff to implement City Council recommended options for bringing custodial services in-house or issuing an RFP for contracted custodial services by January 2025. Do we have any questions?
Council members, any questions? Councilmember Douglas?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for bringing this forward in March, as promised. So really appreciate that. And so it is it in place right now in the municipal building where it's in-house or not?
No, ma'am, it's not currently in-house. We have it, contracted out through a third party
Right.
vendor. Yes.
But we were gonna start it in Wood Building.
So we got approval for the BHE, the temporary position starting in January. We're now advertising for it. As soon as we get that person brought on, we're gonna break that in. So we will report back in July.
Thank you.
Anybody else? I had a question on this here, when I was in the city from 2011, 2019, we did have in-house services. So there were some issues and they brought it. And then we had the new rec center that opened up. So they asked prior to that, could that be, start out with city employees? And it's at the time, well, it's too soon. We have to, actually, when they brought it forward, it was asked and we brought it forward at the time, we should have been talking about, they said, well, we don't have time to discuss it. We're gonna go with this contract. So things have skipped over. And, that was 5 years ago. So to me, to have a custodian as a city employee, it really brings more caring of what the services that you're performing. So someone outside, so they're not gonna care as much because of the appearance. And it shows appreciation as well. Because when you have a city employee actually do the work, they do take pride. So than someone else being contracted, then we're looking at the paycheck and not quality. So thank you for bringing as well in this format. So thank you. So I would say, as it is, or unless there's anybody else to.
So next steps is you'll see a contract brought during public hearing for approval to continue the contract services through the end of the year.
Okay.
We'll come back around July to bring you the update of all the service models. And we will be looking at not just the costs, the possible pros and cons, the benefits, like you said, having in-house employees, having a succession plan for in-house employees to grow with the city, meeting our DEI goals, our sustainability goals. We're going to bring all that to you, not just which one is cheap.
Sure. Appreciate that. There's value in that. Thank you. Shut that down. 3 minutes up. Yeah. Traffic study on Vasquez Boulevard, East Ranch and East 16th Avenue.
Hi, good evening. Mayor, City Council, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem. I'm Sean Poe, City Engineer tonight, and we're gonna give you a little, actually, this presentation. There was some discussion brought up in administrative action at City Council regarding the ramp on East, near the East 68th intersection at Brighton Road. And in addition, there were some other mobility topics that I wanted to give an update on and have some questions afterwards. The overview that we're going to give the presentation, we've got not only staff from the city, but we've also got CDOT staff here tonight. In addition to the ones you heard earlier, we'll talk about a little bit about the existing conditions and some of the data that we've collected, being a data-driven decision-making organization. Identify some options that we're going to talk about, as well as for the short term, but also what we're looking at, that we're in the process of doing for the long term for East 68th Avenue. And then some next steps and questions. As far as the introductions, with me tonight also is Michael Rink, our Transportation Mobility Manager. And then from CDOT, we have Stephen Henry. He's our Region 1 North Program Engineer. He's in the audience too, should there be questions, since Brighton Road, as well as that ramp to Vasquez is within the CDOT right of way. David was here a little earlier, but he had to get back to his family. Just to orient yourself, as far as the location is, this is East 68, running east and west. This is also Elementary School, Colorado Boulevard to the west. And this is Brighton Road, otherwise known as Colorado 265, and Vasquez Boulevard. And this is the ramp that people either come down Brighton Road and get on, or other traffic uses 68th and cuts across to Vasquez Boulevard. So that's the area in question. As mentioned earlier, as far as the data-driven decision-making organization, we collected data back in 2018, 2022, as well as 2024. And we take every traffic concern seriously with that we get from the public, just as the council does. And I want to thank the council for the resources that they provide the city for carrying out their policies. I've been doing this for almost 30 years, and the standard of care the council has had when it comes to traffic and concerns is by far one of the tops that I've worked at, several cities I've worked for. And similarly, staff has that same standard of care. We take everything seriously. So our first step is collecting data to make sure what kind of problem we're trying to address. What are we trying to solve? So we collected data back from 2018 at several locations on 68 at different locations. And as you can see, the trends, as far as the average daily traffic, that's the ADT, they are starting to, the traffic counts have decreased since 2018 when we first took traffic counts in this area when we started getting concerns. The 85th percentile speed is the speed at which 85% of the vehicles are traveling at or below. That has also been as reduced. And a lot of this, it stems from the awareness, some of the traffic calming that the city installed. There were road humps installed right after 2018. And so that has helped curb some of the speeds in that area. So this was good data to look through, and it was the measures that we've taken up to this point, they are working, but there's still a lot of concerns that we get from the public. The other thing we looked at is the vehicle classifications. What types of vehicles are traveling down to the 68th? We were able to collect data back in August 2022. We did attempt to collect it in February 2024 with the other traffic data, and that we experienced a flaw with the collection device. So we didn't have a chance to get it most up to date. But you can see as far as the passengers and cars, that makes up the bulk of the traffic that travels along East 68th. The 69% represents about 1,178 cars a day. The light trucks and vans, the 23%, that represents about 750 or 350 cars per day. Single unit trucks, these are the smaller trucks, not with the trailers. They represent about 100 vehicles per day. Buses, 1%. This does include school buses for Adams 14. That's about 17 a day. And then the multi-unit trucks, which are the larger tractor trailer units, is averaging about 6 a day from the data we collected in 2022. We also collected data on the on-ramp in September 2023 after this was brought up to the city. The majority of the traffic, as far as the classifications, are the passenger cars. As you can see, that ramp during the weekday averaged about 950 vehicles a day. The highest volumes being between 8 and 9 and 3 and 4. Just 8 and 9 makes sense. That's the typical peak hours that you have in people trying to get to work, trying to get to school. The 3 to 4 is about the time the school lets out. So there's a lot of people that pick their kids up that may use that ramp as well. And I don't know if CDOT knew that we took traffic counts on that, so I'm just gonna act, it didn't happen, okay? So, no, we work well with our partners. So options for consideration, we did reach out to Adams 14, and as I mentioned before, they do use the on-ramp for busing operations. RTD, We do know that they are not supposed to be using, E68 and taking, that ramp from E68. But the staff has seen, RTD buses. So we have contacted them and let them know that, that's not appropriate. They were gonna look into it. CDOT, we reached out to them. Again, they're a major partner in this, being it's their roadway. CDOT is fantastic to work with, in our coordinated efforts. And, they've run it through all their divisions, through their maintenance, through their traffic, through their regional office. So they've checked, they went through some of the, what if scenarios, if there was options to close that on-ramp. So some of those options is temporary closing it. Let's take a look at what will happen if we did close it temporarily, and then do additional traffic analysis, see where that traffic is going. What other roadways are they using? Are we just pushing the puddle someplace else? Are they going to use 70th or 72nd rather than going up to 74th and cutting across there? Obviously, the permanently closing the ramp is an option if CDOT approves. We can construct a temporary median on E68 at Brighton to create a ride-in, ride-out condition. But I will say today, Michael Rink was out on site and saw a large truck turning right, and he just kept going down Brighton Road. He didn't use the ramp. So they may be using Brighton Road going down to 56 and then cutting back across to get back to Vasquez or some other route that they're getting to. And then doing a permanent median to create that ride-in, ride-out condition. These are things for the short term, but I do want to go over what we're doing for the long term. The city received a revitalizing Main Street grant, and that project is in the beginning stages of design. It's roughly $1.8 million that we're going to be investing in the roadway, and it's going to basically it's going to be a complete streets roadway. The roadway cross section will narrow as far as the travel lanes. It's going to create more room for multimodal pedestrians. Potentially adding bulb outs at the intersections that will deter the larger trucks, but still allow the fire trucks to turn in and out on 68th. We have visited with the fire department as they're being a partner agency as well. And they don't like the curb extensions because it is just harder to navigate. But it's something that they would work with the city if they were designed appropriately. So we plan on in this design, working with them to look at that further. New crosswalks, potentially having some rectangular rapid flashing beacons at crosswalks, updating all the ADA ramps, striping, new lighting, and drainage improvements. We've heard several complaints, especially in the Albion area, where the water just doesn't get out. So part of this project will be addressing some of the drainage improvements right at the side streets with 68th and 68th in general. So the plan with the 68th project is, again, we're just in the beginning stages of design. We plan to complete the design in March of next year and bid the work in April, so about a year from now, and begin construction in July with getting complete in April 2026. So before we move on to the next multimodal or the discussion regarding traffic operations with the Safe Routes to School update, I'll be glad to take any questions.
That's Martina.
So what is the goal for closing off the ramp going, this is the ramp going from 68 to Highway 85, right?
Correct.
And that's just to try to make the people take longer to go to work?
I think
or what?
there is, people are seeing trucks, large trucks going down E68 rather than going up 74th. And they take E68 and then they take the ramp to sort of short circuit that.
And so do a whole bunch of residents take that ramp.
Right. Yeah, what I want to do today is just present the options and the facts and with the data and allow discussion.
It doesn't make sense to me to increase the time for somebody to get to work, and just those people deserve to.
Right.
not have to take extra 5 minutes to go up to the light and come around and just.
Councilmember Douglas?
Yes, thank you so much for looking at this. Very, very much appreciated. And it shows me that you all are listening, so really appreciate it. Just taking a look at it. So with it's slide number 6. Is that for a 24-hour period? Or is that just?
Is this for the data here? Yes, we took, this traffic data.
notice? I have a different slide, but
The next slide.
yeah.
Oh, for the on-ramp?
Go back one.
Back.
Yes, this was for, the average it was over several days. So the average during those days that we took the counts, it was about 950 vehicles that used that ramp.
Okay.
So that
So it
traffic's
wasn't
gotta go
during
somewhere.
a certain, from certain hour to a certain hour, it did include the overnight.
Yeah, those were all during all hours of the day.
Okay,
But-
yeah, I'm still looking at a different slide, I'm sorry. It's like this, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, this was data taken over several days. And these were the average of the vehicles that traveled along E68, the types of vehicles during that day.
Okay, all right, yeah, because one of the complaints I hear from people who live over in that neighborhood are the big ones coming through like real early morning hours and doing what I think it's called jailbreaking or something.
Jacob's brake,
Yeah,
it's a compression brake that they use to slow down.
right, especially with the
So it's allowed.
with the traffic slow, the humps that are over there, I think
They have to slow down for them.
yeah, they gotta slow down for them, and so I guess they're really loud, from what I understand.
Yeah, because they use the compression, they use the engine basically to slow the vehicle down rather than in conjunction with their brakes, so it's allowed.
Yeah, so it disturbs their sleep, so just checking that out, but really appreciate all of the work that's obviously put behind this, so thank you.
Councilmember Dukes?
Just 2 questions. One is, the way I'm reading this data, and I also echo, Councilmember Douglas about the work and looking at the data. On both slides, right, it says nearly 70% of the traffic is passenger cars and motorcycles, right? Is that right? And then if you add light trucks, that's nearly 80% of the whole traffic, right?
Right.
Is that likely to change because this is 2022 data, or is it kind of consistent with what I see 22 and it's 23? And then you probably won't do a traffic study in 24 yet, right? It's
Correct, yeah. We tried to get data for February 24, but the collection device didn't work properly.
I didn't work right. Okay. So right now, the majority, not even overwhelmingly, it's all residents, cars. And so what makes me think about, like, how do we create a strategy to deter those bad actors, I think, right? In terms of like 1% or 0.4% on this slide. The other question I have is around, you mentioned the busing for the school, and on the slide you talked about that's the primary access point for Adams 14, right? Is that right?
Yeah, they did indicate to us that they did use that ramp to for their operations.
And then can you pull up that chart real quick? So if they don't use that ramp, will that require them to have the bus go all the way up to, like, where will they go? Like 70th and,
They probably go up to 74th.
go 74th and then come down
Yes.
Colorado Boulevard?
Well, that or go east and at the signal to get on Vasquez there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Poe. Yes, that is a challenge that passenger cars are using both ends of this predominantly. Have we looked into a community meeting? to have the residents in the area and the school do it at the school so that they're all involved in coming up with a solution. They can see these numbers and say, okay, there are a lot of people using this street who are people who probably live in the area or are going to work in the area, something. So what do we do if we wind up closing off the ramp? I can see why trucks would want to use a ramp, but of course everyone else does as well. It's just more convenient. So do we need more signs on 68th? Do we need signs that scream children, you know, along 68th? Little green people that bend over and say, slow down, that kind of thing, you know, something, because clearly it is a bother. And I know the Jake break problem happens on 104th too. We have people talk about that. It happens on 96. Anywhere there's a truck, they're going to wind up doing something like that. I don't think we have officers to pull over Jake breakers. But anyway, just have the community involved in coming up with a solution is rather than imposing a solution on them. I like everything that you have done for the multimodal SIP project. That all sounds great.
Yes, it's a great idea, Mayor Pro Tem. One of the things we plan to do with the design of this multimodal project is to have public outreach. And maybe, I think that's a good opportunity to, probably in the next couple of months, when we get to that point, of not only talking about this project, but then maybe bringing up the topic of the ramp and what other modes or what get the feedback from the public would be a good opportunity to do then.
That'd be great. So combine the two.
Right.
Wonderful.
We're not too far off from that.
I think that would help a lot. I always find that people just want to feel like they've been heard, and this certainly demonstrates it. Thank you. You're always good at that.
Do you have a map of the neighborhood just to show? Because, let's see, well, even that first map right there. So we have folks coming out of 68th, on from Claremont, Birch, Bel Air, which could actually, within a neighborhood, go the opposite way, go south on their road, on their street. And there's a street that connects, it doesn't show on the map here, but it actually shows you can go east or west on it, connecting to, what is that?
Serini.
Yeah,
Yes.
Serini.
Serini Street.
Serini off Serini. So if you take Serini through the neighborhood, you can get on the unwrap, that little curve. The bus would have a challenge, but then the bus, as far as dropping off, could go to 69th as well. Even though it might be, traffic light, but still though, that alleviate from going all the way up to 72nd or 74th. So there are.
There's two.
Yeah, because there are two ways, the bus can go around. I think the biggest thing was the impact to the neighborhood, those big trucks going there. That's what started this. That was a catalyst to bring this forward, was the big trucks using that. And then people in the neighborhood. So I think if you had a neighborhood meeting, to actually go over this, to say these were brought forth to city council, is there some proposal? I think they would appreciate that. And then see what it was like to close that down, because we all are here to provide safety. And if this helps that neighborhood become safe, because with the impact with the two apartments going up north on Colorado and potentially some starting the construction below going south in Colorado that was pointed out last week with city council, there's gonna be a lot of activity. And they're all gonna take a shortcut, which is 68th. So I do appreciate you guys bringing this forward and those options.
Yeah, we definitely do that in our outreach for the 68 project.
Any other questions, Councilman? Thank you.
We'll move right into our presentation on the Safe Streets for All and our safety action plan. First off, I'm going to give some introductions. This is our overview of the presentation. Talk a little bit about Safe Streets.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Forgot the last slide on that. Safe sidewalks to schools.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sorry about that. You had questions, but then that was after that, yes.
That's exactly right. All right. Well, at one of the other council meetings, I think, Mary, you brought this up as far as safe routes to school. That is a program that's administered every year through CDOT with federal funding. Their next call is planned for August of this year. We do plan to submit up to 4 projects, depending on the available funding. There's $11 million, I think, over the next 3 years, so it's going to put us about $3 million in this area for this year. One of those is getting a walk from Chambers to the 27J schools that are located in Brighton. We've already had a meeting, an outreach meeting with Adams County and their traffic group, as well as the city of Brighton and their city engineer. They are all on board with this. They understand the sensitivity and the amount of kids that do use that area. There has been some discussions of who should carry the grant application. So we're going to work through those logistics. That's definitely one of the ones we're going to have. Brighton owns and maintains the intersection at Sable. So there's going to be some traffic intersection improvements that will need to take place for ADA ramps to get them across safely in that area due to the high speeds of the traffic coming over the bridge. So that's one of the ones we're looking at. The other one is sidewalk ramp replacements around Kemp Elementary and some other elementaries in our core city, which is about a total of 50 ramps that we're looking to replace. When the core city was built, everything was built with about 3-foot wide sidewalks that are not standard today. They were standard back in that time frame, but it's not the standard today. A third project is a sidewalk replacement around Central Elementary School, around 64th, and then around the Arnold High School. We don't have, it's a really bad sidewalk. The condition is, it's very degraded, and then upgraded to a 4-foot width at Lester Arnold. And then another project is replacing some school zone flashing signs in the core city. It would cost about $400,000. So these are what we're planning on submitting based on just the needs of the area to try to make that connectivity to the schools and make those areas safer.
You know, we were in DC, they had a congressional district spending that's open until the first part of April.
Yeah, there's another one that just came out, notice funding on Friday. And it's the Active Transportation ATIIP program, and I think that's the one you're referring to.
No, that's something different. This one here just opened up when we were there. It's going to close the first week of April.
Okay,
And
we'll look into that. I know that there's a seminar in April for this particular notice of funding.
okay,
And I think there's 3 dates they're due. It's for active transportation, which this will fall under as well.
I think they're only doing that also because the election, they're trying to close out those dollars for 2025.
We'll definitely look into that with our liaisons.
All right, appreciate that. Council members have any questions? Yes.
You may have been thinking about the appropriations bill for
Yeah.
next year. So we did get $4.1 million for Chambers Road for this year. And then to submit for next year, 25 appropriations, the deadline is the 29th.
Okay.
And we will be showing you those options.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Dukes.
Just question, is there any funding around like doing the same expansion around the sidewalks, like around Pioneer Park and West 60th? I mean, this funding, of course, is dedicated around schools, but have you heard of any other opportunities that would help?
Yeah, I think around parks too would also be an eligible project for Safe Routes to School. It's just that we have to look into it, see what areas you looking.
I'm looking at between Holly and Monaco, like the whole stretch of Pioneer Park where they're 3 feet as well. And so if you're walking as a youth, you can't walk side by side there. But on 60th right there.
On the north side or south side?
This would be the north side. And so I just think, I mean, yeah.
I think better.
They're 3 feet. They're like on both sides.
All the sidewalks are 3 feet down.
Yeah.
Yeah, the north side is in front of the various single family detached, and it's the tax center that we have there. And we have a detached, I think, 8 or 12 foot wide sidewalk on the south side in front of mine. Yes.
So being that you've got I don't know how well that would score because you've got a good path on the south side. From
Even if it's close to Kearney Middle School,
we take a look at it.
that'll be another place for high hazards, but we won't talk about that.
Add that to the list.
Yeah, that's a lot of speed anywhere.
Any other council members?
But thanks.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for bringing it.
I'm sorry to jump the gun there on the safe routes to school. But as far as the presentation for the safe streets or safety action plan, we'll talk a little bit about the safe streets and the grant program that the city received a grant with FHWA. I'll let you drive to. And just basically what the safe systems approach, which is sort of the framework of developing a safety action plan, is all about. We'll talk a little bit about the components, the coordination that we'll be undertaking with all of our partner agencies. The county is also in the process of doing a countywide safety action plan. Some of the corridor studies that are in process. City Manager Rogers talked about the Highway 2. It's also got a 64th corridor plan. So there'll be some coordination with there, along with some of our partnering agencies with RTD and the CDOT. And we'll go over the schedule with some of the next steps. And so with that, I want to introduce Jennifer Carpenter with Michael Baker International. She's a project manager for the consultant that's helped us put this together. And I've already introduced Michael. He's back there for support as well. And so I'll turn it over to Jennifer.
All right. So Safe Streets and Roads for All is a federally funded grant program. It is administered by the Federal Highway Administration, and they have basically two buckets of money. They have the planning and demonstration grant money, and they have the implementation grant money. The safety action plan that we'll be talking about tonight falls under the planning and demonstration grant funding. So the city was awarded $120-ish thousand to complete the safety action plan. And you all pitched in $30,000 as a local match. So the safe systems approach, this project will follow Federal Highway Safe Systems approach. And there are 6 principles associated with that we will incorporate and consider as we go through this project. 3 of them are identified here, but I'll walk through each of them briefly. The first one is that death and serious injury is unacceptable. So the goal there is to reduce the severity of crashes. And there's a couple ways you can do that. You reduce the impact of the crash, you reduce speeds. For example, broadside crashes. Broadside crashes when you have somebody going straight and somebody who's going perpendicular and they collide, or an angle crash where you have somebody turning left and somebody going straight and they collide. Those 2 types of crashes have the highest percentage of fatal injury crashes of any other crash type. So those are the ones that we really want to reduce, and if at all possible. An example of how you can do that is through roundabouts. So roundabouts eliminate the ability to have that type of crash, and they reduce speeds. So they're a great countermeasure when you're thinking about ways to apply the safe systems approach to your roadway network. The second principle is humans make mistakes. And so we are going to anticipate that people are going to make mistakes, but we want to reduce the impact when that happens. So you can do that by separating users in time and space and increasing awareness. Examples of those, you can separate users in time and space by using this might get a little technical, so me back if I need to. I'm going to try and keep it high level. The flashing yellow arrow left turn signal heads that you guys have. Those can be programmed, and CDOT programs them pretty regularly these days, so that if a pedestrian pushes the button and they want to cross the road, and the left turn would have a permissive phase where they could go if there's a gap. With the way you would program this is that the left turn would then get a red light, so they could not go. So then the pedestrian no longer has that conflict. That's one way you separate the users in time and space. Increasing awareness, you can do that by using signage and striping to make drivers aware of when they may interact with bicycles and pedestrians. So those are some examples. The third principle is to proactively identify risks. So we are going to conduct analysis that looks at crash data, and we're going to identify where there's crash hotspots. But we're also going to look at the roadway network as a whole and what type of geometries have higher risk. And some of these locations may not have a crash pattern today, but the way that it's designed could lead to crashes in the future. And so we're going to identify some of those as we move forward. There's 3 other principles. Humans are vulnerable. So essentially our bodies have physical limits for tolerating crashes. Responsibility is shared. Essentially what that means is it's not about just the users on the road. It's about the people who design the road, the people who built the road, the people who maintain the road, and those users to all be responsible and ensure that the safety of the network is a whole. And then finally, redundancy is crucial. And so on the next slide here, we talk about, in addition to those 6 principles, there's 5 elements to the safe systems approach. And redundancy can happen through these different elements. So safe road users is exactly what it sounds like. It's people being safe and responsible when they're driving on the road to make sure that everybody can get to their destination safely. Safe roads is ensuring that we are mitigating human mistakes on the roadway network. Safe vehicles, we're relying on those car manufacturers to implement new technology to improve safety and design vehicles so that it reduces the severity of crashes when they do happen. Safe speeds. CDOT is going through a process right now where they are updating their approach to identifying posted speed limits by making it more contextual, very consistent with what the latest version of the MUTCD, Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, that just came out. And then finally, post-crash care. So when a crash happens, you want to enhance their terminology, enhance the survivability of crashes through expedient access to emergency medical care. In addition to that, something that people don't always think about is preventing secondary crashes. I've heard of a number of different crashes where the officer is out on the scene, they're dealing with a crash that happened and then they get hit. And so making sure that there's robust traffic incident management practices. So what does that mean for this study? There are 8 scope elements or components of this study here. And each and every one of these is required for a safety action plan in order to make it eligible to go after implementation funding down the road. The first one of these elements is the planning structure. So we're going to start by identifying members of a planning oversight committee. That could be the police department. It could be CDOT. It could be Public Works. It could be the youth. It could be a number of folks. It could be a city council member. And that group is going to be responsible for oversight of this project throughout the entire length of the project and beyond. The next piece of this is equity. So we want to identify where there's equity concerns across the city. US DOT has this Equitable Transportation Community Explorer that you can see on the right here. And that indicates that nearly half of your residents live in a disadvantaged census tract. So our goal for this project is make sure that their voices are heard. The next step is safety analysis. So we'll look at the crash data, we'll identify where there's crash hotspots, but we're going to look at those roadway geometry and roadway network to identify where there's other potential for risk on the network. The engagement and collaboration. So we are going to probably kick that off around late summer. We discovered that Adams 14 has a back to school event and it's in the core city. So we really want to be part of that so we can get feedback from students and parents that are in the core city and where those disadvantaged census tracts are identified. Policy review. So once we've done our analysis, we've gathered our engagement, our feedback, we're going to look at existing policy documents and identify areas where modification to those policies would benefit and improve the policy and match better with the city's vision for safety moving forward. The next step would be to identify safety countermeasures and recommendations. So some of those recommendations could be location specific. Others may be more general recommendations that could be applied at different locations across the city. The second to last step is to take everything that we've done, draft a document, bring it to all of you for adoption. And then the last and final step is the progress and transparency. So we'll identify metrics that staff can use to look at how effective this plan is into the future. And it'll be likely on an annual basis. And then to show transparency, the plan will be posted on the website for the public to see. And so, as Sean mentioned, we know that there is a whole lot of other work that is going on and about to go on very soon. Adams County, for example, was awarded funds through the Denver Regional Council of Governments to conduct a comprehensive safety action plan. And we believe that the city will benefit from that plan as they work in concert with one another. We're not exactly sure what that looks like just yet because of the timing of the plan. So the Adams County plan, we expect to kick off in August or September timeframe. And then there's a whole bunch of other plans here that you can see. A handful of these are in the city, and our goal is going to be to coordinate with all of these other plans to make sure that we have a very cohesive plan moving forward, and that all of these other plans that the city is doing will also be able to benefit from what we're doing. So this is a 12-month project schedule. We are just kicking it off. Very excited to get moving on the project, and we anticipate that the final report will be ready around February of next year, just in time for you guys to adopt it so that we can help the city potentially go after some implementation dollars around this time next year. Let's see. So next steps. We are going to move forward with the safety action plan. We're going to make sure that we are able to check all of the boxes for the 8 different components that are required so we can meet the eligibility, so that you guys are eligible to go after implementation funding. Really, really important to note that implementation dollars are very, very, very competitive right now. So any projects that you want to move forward into implementation are going to need to align really well with the scoring criteria. One of those scoring criteria obviously is making sure that you can show how a project improves safety and helps to reduce crashes. There's a number of others, equity is a big one, and there's a number of different factors. So making sure that those align will be critical. And then one last piece is your CIP projects may or may not be able to be incorporated into this project and prioritize with all of the other projects based on the criteria and how it all shakes out and how the criteria that they need. So with that, questions do you have?
Those are questions. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thanks very much for the presentation and for the steps that are being taken right now. I have a couple of questions. One of them is Adams County has begun its corridor study, the 420th. And we are in the process, I understand, of 120th being widened between Tower and Chambers. How does that impact? How are we coordinating on that? And then I have another question.
I can answer that. We have, there's a technical advisory committee that's set up for the East 128th corridor study that Adams County is overseeing. We do have staff, Gerardo sits on that. And that plan is working in concert and collaboratively with the widening improvements that we're planning. they anticipated that widening as part of their study. So they're working in concert. It's to make sure that that's taken into consideration. And I think you guys are working on that as well.
I'm the project manager for that project. There will be coordination, I promise.
Okay.
Um,
And I noticed on the schedule that
Mhm.
runs from March to March.
Yeah.
I don't see anything describing community engagement.
Yeah.
I know Adams County is doing a survey right now to ask citizens to comment on 120th, but we don't have that included in our schedule to be asking
So
for that.
it's right there in
It's hard
July.
to see, but it's the
This
top
one
right.
here.
Where is right there?
Right, can you see my mouse? July, August timeframe? Like late July?
We'll meet with stakeholders. Who
So
are the stakeholders that you're?
we, through the process, we'll identify who the stakeholders are that we need to meet with. We'll identify any advocacy groups, we'll identify, neighborhood leaders that could be part of this, but we'll also be doing a larger, broader outreach. Something that we're doing, and I think you just referenced it for the 120th study, we're using a program called MetroQuest. It's a digital engagement tool to gather feedback from residents and stakeholders and the public. We will likely, it's not been determined yet because we are just kicking the project off, but it's likely that we'll use that as one form of engagement. But as I mentioned, there's other folks that we want to make sure are part of this and that we can hear the voices. And not everybody has access to a computer. And so this Adams 14 back to school event is one of those things that we would like to participate in so that we can, we'll have a way for them to engage with us during that process. My coworker, Anne, is amazing at coming up with various ideas for engagement and ensuring that people can be heard. And so anything that we do will be translated to Spanish, so that we're capturing those users and stakeholders. We're going to, we may reach out to schools because they're a big piece of the city and making sure that they're, as you guys were just talking about, improving safety for schools. And so as we go through the process, we'll identify who all those people are and then the best ways to reach each of them. Does that
Okay,
help?
that's good. It wasn't as clear as you just made it in this meet
We
with
try to keep it
stakeholders
high level.
Yeah. or something, or
Yes.
too low.
Sure.
I think it would be good then if you are looking for people who are neighborhood leaders to ask the city council members for referrals.
Great. That's
Because if there's
fantastic.
anybody who knows who is active in the community and who is more engaged in the community and who is watching more, it would be city council members.
Yeah.
And that's something that doesn't happen too often.
Yeah.
But I think it would be a really excellent way to start if you want to do a community referral process.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councilmember Douglas.
So I'd like to piggyback on Mayor Protem's comments about the reaching out to the council people who have direct access to the community members. Because otherwise, a lot of times they miss the invitations if it's personal, not necessarily an invitation, but just so that an announcement, basically. Then you're gonna come. And anytime you have these, I would suggest maybe setting up a mic so that people can talk to the whole room. Give them a couple minutes to speak. And it really, I think it will help you in the success of your whatever project you're working on. But yes, please notify us in plenty of time so that we can get those announcements out to people so that they can engage. Because they do need to engage here, but they just need to be aware.
Thanks. Feedback.
Just adding the stakeholder engagement, you probably thought about this already, but for us to help provide information, it would be great if you have qualitative and quantitative, like specific themes. If you hear certain themes over and over. I like to see that quantified, in addition to the qualitative, I like this, don't like that, but it helps us make a data informed decision. Because you hear me say like sometimes just the loudest voice isn't necessarily the community voice, and so having that data helps. So appreciate it.
Since we're on the topic already. It's important to not just focus on the equity NGOs, but the community members. I learned this with tribal communities. If you focus just on the tribal leaders, you don't hear what's really going on with the grassroots issues.
Sure.
So the actual community members, those that aren't necessarily affiliated with orgs, because then it gets too org heavy, and sometimes orgs have an agenda. So just kind of,
Okay.
I have noticed. That was it, sorry. Thank you.
Yes, I appreciate this presentation. And the plans, because they're all over. So I was at the Dr. Cog and they were talking about regional improvements and studies and everything. They brought up Adams County, it actually showed more going towards I-25 and really didn't focus on showing this metrics. So that's very helpful that this is being taken as well. So, any other questions?
I just also wanted to thank you for the opportunities to work with us as partners. I mean, I think this is the first time that this has happened, so thank you so much.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank
you for
Oh,
coming.
wait, I have one more. I'm sorry, I have one more thing. Since this is gonna take a full year, can we just try and make more merge lanes when we put in these new subdivisions? So when you're making a right turn, you have a lane that you can go in for a right turn. When you're going into the subdivision, when you're coming out of the subdivision, then you have a right turn as well. I mean, you can merge then with the traffic.
Acceleration.
Can we do that in the interim without somebody telling us?
Well, if there's opportunities for that to occur, we will definitely take a look at that.
Because I worry about people getting rear-ended, especially on Tower Road. That's so fast. And there's going to be so many houses there.
That's from Dukes.
Just kind of piggybacking on that, isn't there like best practices that you can implement? Like that's the best practice in my mind as well. Like, are there other things that we don't have to wait until?
No, we do have standards in our land development code now, that does, if there's so many vehicles per hour that turn and make a certain turn that, it would qualify for, but that's usually when as the development is occurring. We've got a lot of intersections that, have grown due to the growth that are maybe beyond outside the limits of the development, but still people are using those roadways. 88th comes to mind, off Tower, making that connection to Telluride and some of that cut through traffic that we're getting. So those are some of the areas that we're looking at. We're in the process now of identifying projects for a capital improvement program. Those are due to finance later in April, which eventually you guys will be seeing the prioritized projects that staff will be putting forth later on.
But so there is a balance of like, you can, with the new land code, right? You said the land code or the
The
traffic?
land development code.
Land development code, yeah. That we can actually start implementing the best practice. I do agree, like we shouldn't have to wait for a year.
We have those established.
We do it, and it doesn't have to come back to council, it's just the
So
talk about it.
I do have to throw a little bit of
Okay.
cold water on that because there are certain things that drive when those improvements come in place. We have to look at both, not just, we have to look obviously at new development and what's driving new development's impacts and how those have to be mitigated. So that's a just clear classic Nolan and Dolan proportionality rational nexus test. So if the development's not driving the need for a merge lane, and we don't have any analysis to support that, we then just can't.
Yeah, okay.
Because then we may be creating additional liability by having certain improvements in place that aren't necessarily warranted.
But, okay, that makes sense. But from an operational standpoint, you're looking at data and you're doing the best practices as possible that we don't have to wait.
Right. We're not waiting. I want to dispel that. If there's a need for an improvement that's being driven and we have the funding or we need to come to get the funding, we're not waiting to go ahead and implement it.
Okay, okay.
So we're already strategically looking at what can be done, when it can be done, if it's being necessitated by the development. If it's not being necessitated by the development, then what can we do? And with the funding sources that we have, if we need that funding, we then come to council.
The land use plan revisions aren't going to come back to us for a year or so, right?
So what we're talking about merge lanes, those don't exist in the land development code.
Okay,
So when we talk about roadway design, Public Works has its own design criteria for its roadways, depending on the classification of it being a major, minor arterial, or major, minor collector in a local residential street. So when we're looking at development, we're looking at that in the bigger picture. That's when we start to piece those different developments together as requirements to hit along Tower Road, right? So an example, Legato. Legato has striped additional lanes, however, they're not in use because they're not necessitated to support the development. Ultimately, when the traffic volumes get there, we will be able then to switch those lanes to being able to proper use. So it's all about also the traffic that's delivering, that's driving it. But that comes out of, quite frankly, the International Transportation Engineers code that goes into a traffic study, but also our design requirements and standards that we have in place for public works.
I would though, ask that we look at this in terms of projections as well. So we have, Second Creek Farms, Legato, Settlers Crossing, a new charter school on 88th, a new high school on 96th. Traffic is already really difficult on Tower Road without those houses even being built yet. Those neighborhoods have not been built out. On top of it, just to add to the worsening situation, our neighbor who is a distributor for Anheuser-Busch said the new Pepsi distribution center down at Pena and Tower Road is the only one in the region. They are consolidating all the trucks there, all the bottles there, and they will all be leaving from that point and likely coming up Tower Road and taking 96th and whatever the case might be as soon as it's finished. So I would really hope that we can have a projection study, is that even possible, of 96th and Tower in particular? Because that's a truck route and that just makes me really nervous to have. I don't like industrial next to residential, but I really don't like industrial traffic mixed in with residential either. If there's something, is there anything that we can do to address that?
Yeah, the traffic study was part of the East 96 improvement project that we're working on now. It's taking all that into consideration, what the land uses are, the traffic generation that's going to be a byproduct of that development, and putting in the lanes necessary to take care of that, especially at Tower Road and some of the other signalizing.
So your data shows those neighborhoods built out, those 3 subdivisions
Correct.
built out?
Yes, and what that traffic generation is going to be.
Okay, I'd love to see that.
Sure.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dukes.
I just think that actually would be good, like in the weekly reports, as you're kind of, when we send those out, like here's letting residents know that you're already taking into consideration the projections as well as some of the traffic studies, so that people know, like, as a city, we are thinking about this and we do know like things are happening. And there's certain things that will trigger more expansion of lanes or so. So people, when they reach out to us, they don't just say, oh, it's horrible, but we're like, we know, but there is a trigger and this is a part of the best practice and models that this city working on. Something to think about.
And I thank you very much for the presentation. It's great highlights. I was going to say that we didn't talk about this during our study session, our retreat, but Tower Road going north between 84th and 88th. Well, actually, I'm sorry, 81st, people get over because 3 lanes, they race up, they go right. And then as you get close to Republic Services,
Yes.
lane cuts off. So I would rather be proactive and then sort of waiting because we already know traffic's there. And maybe have, or at least from Tower to 88 because of the truck traffic that's turning onto the landfill area. That we make that a third lane and then just maybe push over a lane, entry lane for Republic so they can at least get in, or facility, but make that an open lane for the third lane, at least up to 88th. I understand about not, 88 between 88 between 96. That'd be great if that was as well, but at least if we did this one, it would have a right turn. It wouldn't be a continuous lane. It would be right. So then as you get up to 88 from 96, eventually that could be a third lane that will end at 96 to turn east. And like a progression type of thing, not so save us money, but then it also shows that we're actually doing something about the traffic because it is very much piles up in the evening. It doesn't so much in the morning, but in the evening, a lot of pass-through traffic because of the airport. A lot.
So between 88th and 96, converting that from a 4 lane to a 6 lane?
No. So between, wish we could do a map there. 81st. So it's 81st, down by Canopy, airport parking, all the way to 88th going north. Yes. So right now it's 3 lanes till you get to Republic.
Right.
And then it cuts off. So just extending out the 3 lanes up to 88th. That way, that traffic that's going to the landfill can actually use that right lane and the other traffic can keep going straight because it bottles up.
Yeah, you brought that up with the tree and we will look.
Oh, I didn't bring that one up. The one I brought was between 88th and 96,
Oh, okay. That might
but
be
not
a
that
different
one, yes. Sorry about that.
Gotcha.
Okay. Thank you. Any other council members? Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
So have they solved tomorrow? I have a horror story.
It does get me all the time because I do forget it.
Oh, my God.
Well, it does, because I guess the 3 lanes, and then you merge.
And
It does get you.
And I said that to you.
Yeah.
To our right.
Yeah.
With a step that, lane to
the right. Oh, my gosh.
my husband said,
Yeah, it does.
starting videoing.
Yes.
Take a picture, he's only 16-year-old.
Hey, man,
March Madness.
That is there.
it's all been upset. So there's no bracket left.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, because I figure I guess they're present.
Yeah.
All right, City Manager Rogers, can you provide your weekly report?
Thank you, Mayor. I will keep this succinct and quick. Starting with economic development. This Thursday is the last day of feedback provided on the ED strategic plan in the month of March. This will be in person at Eagle Point from 6 to 8 p.m. With Public Works, we're out soliciting proposals for qualified vendors to provide on-demand general street and sidewalk repair and minor construction services. We intend to execute a contract with an anticipated notice to proceed date Friday, May 17th, 2024. Staff is also working through our annual pavement management program process by holding pre-bid meetings for hot in place asphalt milling and overlay, and slurry seal. And all of those meetings occurred last week. PRG, the city will be celebrating Arbor Day on April 19th from 5 to 9:30 a.m. at Bison Ridge and Eagle Point with a tree giveaway raffle. And then the following day on April 20th, we will be partnering with the Refuge to celebrate Earth Day with a variety of activities be held at the Refuge Center from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. With our police department on March 20th, our youth services team visited several daycare centers around the city. This is the first time that this has been done. And this is in an effort to build rapport with the children there and they engage the community in a new and different way. Last but not least, as we continue with progress with the Northern Range PD substation design and ultimately leading to construction, we continue to outgrow the existing storefront, serving as interim substation. In that, we've begun exploring an additional location in the interim in the northern range. I plan on bringing a more formal discussion with ultimately an item before council to consider as a lease agreement for some additional space. We anticipate the northern range substation will be a 2-year build with a transition period into that building, which is really looking at a 3-year outlook. As I shared earlier, as our city continues to grow, our need for law enforcement and police officers continue to grow with it, and the majority of that growth is occurring in the northern range. So any lease that we would be looking at would be for a 5-year period to give us some contingency. As we all know in Colorado, until you put a shovel in the ground, and when you put a shovel in the ground, building is very different. So we like to think about this in a longer period of time that we'd be looking at for some of that additional comfort. And at the location that's being looked at, not able to publicly disclose because we're still working with the property owner in question, that we'd obviously bring forward to you all, will allow us to have the same effect with the actual permanent northern range substation, because it will allow for us to be able to get the areas more efficiently and in a timely manner. So there's more to come on this. This is just more of a heads up to you all that something will be brought forward for a more definitive and more in-depth conversation. But just want to let you know and put that on your radar.
Thank you. City Attorney Sergeant.
I'll also keep it short. We hired a legal assistant. I think I had mentioned that we were doing so a couple of weeks ago. Her name is Elizabeth Kern, and her first day was today. We're ecstatic to have her. We pulled her from the 17th Judicial District. She was a previous supervisor. Can-do attitude, very positive. We're ecstatic to have her as part of our team. We've also posted a senior assistant city attorney position who will be the police legal advisor. And additional to that, at council's request, my office is preparing an amendment to the camping ban ordinance with a corresponding legal memorandum. I won't get into the substance of that memorandum, but you should see that in your inboxes by Wednesday of this week. Also at council's request, we are researching the puppy mill ordinance and additional provisions for governmental regulation of breeders. Staff member on my team's been hard at work at that for the last week. We should have that ready for your review by the end of this week. So you'll see two additional memos in the next couple of days. And as I alluded to earlier this evening, I will be meeting with Bill Aiken tomorrow to discuss the URA and the city attorney's office relationship. For example, in the near term, some of those action items that I've identified as the review and revision of the URA's bylaws. That was last amended in 2016. That is all I have for now.
Thank you. I think those members have a report to make. Director.
I attended, along with Councilmember Teeter, the Friends of Front Range Refuge meeting last week. And also during the day, Civitas consultants who are working with KSE did a tour of the Arsenal, which I had encouraged them to do because of the iconic views from the Arsenal and what the impact would be on the kind of buildings that they might desire to put up, and do they leave view corridors and so on and so forth. So I was really pleased that they did make that stop and they did make that tour on Thursday. Also, there was a discussion at the last meeting about metro districts and which communities might not have metro districts, who might be of some assistance or have few. So Commerce City, as you know, has 65 metro districts. Longmont has 1 metro district. The rest of the subdivisions are built in totally normal ways that any developer would typically do it. So I would suggest contacting Longmont. Their standards are very strict in what they ask. You have to literally qualify. It's not that they're giving you a service plan. You literally have to qualify to have a metro district, as if it's a privilege and that you are doing something to benefit to the community, which Sounded like a really terrific idea to me. We still need a water dispenser for containers on the main level in this building. So we have all these people who are coming to court and people come to council meetings and so forth. And there's no way to put a container in the water fountain doesn't work. You can't do it in the bathrooms. So we need one of those systems that goes into the wall where you can put your water bottle up and fill it for the whole community that comes to visit on the first floor in City Hall. And also, the final thing is chickens. So the question of chickens has come up, and since that was passed by the voters of Commerce City, we haven't had a discussion about chickens and what needs to happen. Does there need to be a next step? People have been asking about what they can do about chickens.
My understanding, John Bergeli from my office is working with the city attorney's office on crafting an ordinance based off of the voters' direction pertaining to saying yes to chickens and bees in the backyard. Obviously, there was some discussion previously about some of the language that could be included. I have to once again follow up with them to see where they're at with.
And that would go for beekeeping also.
Chickens
Which
and
brings
bees
up,
and not ducks.
yeah, and this brings up my last question. There is a school in Commerce City that has livestock and that kind of thing at the school. Are schools able to have bees, chickens, any other kind of livestock on their property if it's not allowed by the city ordinances?
It depends on the location where that school may be, if it's in a PUD. And if they're, once again, that PUD trumps the land development code unless certain sections of that PUD are silent. So we have to look at the location and see what it's zoned.
Are there any metro districts in any approved metro districts in Commerce City that don't have a PUD?
I can't speak to that off the top of my head, ma'am. That's something we'd have to look at. For instance, the Sand Creek Business Center, which is a landfill, also has a metro district. So if you're looking at residential, or if you're looking at residential, commercial, industrial.
Well, that's the only one in the south. So I would say the 64 that are in the north.
Like I said, I can't speak off the top of my head. I'm looking at the map behind you. I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't one that doesn't have a metro district that's PUD, but we'd have to do that due diligence. We'd have to look into that. So.
Okay, because that's a complicating factor when you're talking to people about metro districts, in that there is an overlay of a PUD that also goes over and beyond the service plan in any regulations in some way, because since we passed stricter regulations that PUDs are in place for some of these existing metro districts.
I guess maybe I'll have to get a better understanding from you, because when I think of PUD and metro districts, they're two different.
I understand there are two different things. One's governmental.
Hold on for a minute. So when I think of a PUD, that's a land use mechanism.
Right.
And the metro district is a financing mechanism.
Right.
So I guess when I don't see those as another layer, they are operating under different functions. I'm trying to keep this simple so I don't overcomplicate it, right? Zoning is accomplishing one thing, the service plan and the financial mechanisms that are being established in the service plan are accomplishing something different.
I think that the average citizen, I'm just referring to the average citizen, sort of conflates those concepts and don't separate them. So that's where confusion is as to what's occurring.
That helps me. So we can try to do a better job of trying to separate out the communication between those two so it doesn't get conflated into one. And why I say that, yes and no, is right. Your PUD that talks about the land use, which also drives the infrastructure that's necessary, is still reflected in the metro district. But that metro district isn't driving the land use. It should be responding to what was already discussed.
What about the intergovernmental agreement? So I looked at the Metro District service plans that were approved in 2019, August 19th, 2019. There were 15 Metro District service plans approved, and they were accompanied by an intergovernmental agreement, which is not part of the public record. The intergovernmental agreement was not part of the public record for the council meeting when they approved the Metro District.
Which metro district might this be?
Reunion Ridge, Reunion Village, Reunion Center, Natural Resources District, and so maybe it was 20, no, Natural Resource District is one, but the other ones are multiple. They're all multiple districts. And the final question was, what other master servant metro districts are in Commerce City besides Reunion and Second Creek Farm?
We'll have to look into that as well. I do remember seeing those emails come across the staff, the latter half of last week. Have not had a chance to speak to see what they've been able to dig up. But I know it's something that, John Bergeli, who is our primary staff liaison on understanding the various structures of it, has planned on looking into.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Councilman Teeter.
Just real quick on the bees ordinance, just got information. So it's on the agenda for May 6th.
May 6th.
Yeah, I believe it's already in draft form, right? Ready to go.
Yes.
Did you put in today?
Chickens would be on the same.
The ordinance and the draft.
Oh, the chickens.
Chickens and bees, it's chickens and bees, right?
And the bees.
Bees.
Thankfully, no, John.
How's that draft?
It'll be an ordinance, I believe, yeah.
I figured if you needed help, you would ask.
Did we forget
The birds and the bees. Birds and bees.
Councilman Teeter.
Okay, on that, me and Susan both attended the Rocky Mountain Wildlife Refuge. And we both had the same question in mind. Charlie Sharman was a contractor out there, and after a number of years, he's going to retire. And he just gave his final report. But anyway, in his report, he noted that we was having earthquakes back in the 60s. And so the subject came up, well, how much liquid did you pump into the ground back then? And he pumped 568,000 gallons of water into the ground and 165 million gallons of poison.
165 million.
Pardon?
165 million.
165 million. And my reason for the question was, I don't know if it's.
We
the
both
same
asked the
as-
same question,
same
and we
as
had
Susan,
different purposes.
But I'm concerned about the earthquakes from fracking.
Me too.
And this, I don't think we come, not even anywhere close to 165 million gallons. Or even the water that they pumped down, 568,000 gallons. I mean, it's just, there's no comparison whatsoever.
It's 10 million per well.
It's 10.
10 million per well to
Okay.
frack.
Okay, so that would be
And
how
so you need
much?
to multiply.
165 million versus 10 million. Is-
10 million, that's one well.
That's one well, yeah.
There's 36. Many.
Anyway.
Good
As soon as they stopped, the earthquake stopped.
I remember that. I took that Littleton.
But that was just kind of interesting. I thought everybody should know about it.
All right. That's a lot of poison. Councilmember Dukes.
Just to report that I was with Councilmember Douglas and Mayor Douglas at the Adams County Commission and Mayor's
Mayors
Youth
and
Award-
commissioners use the
Youth Awards. And it was a great event, being able to share our youth that overcome stories of obstacles and be able to get a nice award, laptop. gift cards and things to our Paradise Island and things like, so families were excited to have that access. And kind of thinking about metro districts, and cities that don't have metro districts. So I think looking at Montrose, who actually doesn't have a local tax, like property tax, don't have property tax, they wrote it in their charter in the eighties, and then, but they developed an economic development strategy to overcome a lot of that. So it'd be a great city to look at because they rely on Telluride taxes, but they worked with developers to create a strong economic development plan. So it might be something to look at.
Good. Councilmember Chicago.
Trying to remember if I have any reports for today. We did a panel today for environmental justice with Green Latinos and E4 Inclusives. Also with Boulder County Councilmember Taisha Adams to talk about all of the cumulative impacts that disproportionately impacted communities, educating communities. I believe we had 80 people registered on that from state agencies to community members from all around Colorado. So we're not just educating just on legislation, but how community members can come and help with local municipalities to either establish their own coalitions, their own boards, or volunteer in some aspect of community oversight. So that was like 2 hours worth today. And can't think of anything else.
Councilmember Douglas.
Thank you. So Mayor Pro Tem, you forgot one of the meetings that you attended, and that was the Cultural Council meeting on Tuesday.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't give you credit for that. I was also there.
Thank you.
We had a lively discussion about possibility of bringing back the idea of a cultural center on the Brain backtrack. So that was interesting, but looking forward to the music in the park events this summer. And we've really been working hard on that. And the Cultural Council is going to be a part of the Memorial Day Parade as well, and the activities following the parade. And then I also joined the mayor and council member Dukes at the Adams County Mayors and Commissioners Youth Awards. It's always a hard one to remember, but in attending that, it seems like 4 years, when the mayor was on council previously, always joined in on those, and they're so cool. The kids are just to see kids strive and persevere and overcome great obstacles, struggles in their personal lives to achieve success in their academic lives is really something to see. So next year, we're going to really encourage the nominators to step forward and ask more teachers to nominate kids and pack the room and buy some girl a fabulous job on the dinner. It was a really good dinner. So, and then as far as like the earthquakes and the fracking, yeah, you should, or Councilmember Dieter, you should be concerned because the same kind of poison that was shot down into the ground with the Basin F, those are the same kind of toxins that they use in the fracking fluid, and it causes lubrication. It lubricates, and it
They don't
causes.
use insecticides from fracking.
No, but I'm telling you that they can be classified as the same. So that's, I mean, you've heard of the earthquakes that were in Greeley and down near Telluride and places like that. So they do happen because of it. So it is a concern, and that's because the toxins that they put into the fracking fluid actually cause the plates to lubricate and shift and move. And so, just wanted you to know that, and a lot of research and studying on this stuff. So that's why it happens. So we just want to be precautious with that and not have our citizens have to experience anything like that, especially with the 24-inch high pressure pipeline that we have coming through our city from Fort Lupton down to the Cherokee plant to create electricity for natural gas. So it goes right in front of some of the daycare centers that we have and through some people's backyards in this little part of the city. So we just want to, and ounce of prevention is worth the pound of cure. So all right, thank you.
Thank you. Last week, Wednesday, I was able to, opportunity to swear in our new detective for the police department. And it was an interesting. He asked me, he says, can you slow it down there? Because I'm nervous. I said, well, I remember being in that position. And yeah, I've done this a few times. I said, I'm nervous too, so we're gonna be nervous together. So just kind of lighten things up. So, but I appreciate the fact that he's able to come in and he's sworn in to help their police department out. Especially as a detective, because he has great experience from South Adams. And in the evening, Dr. Cog board meeting. And when these things are talked about legislatively, because everybody has their pieces and what they are actually are looking at supporting. And that's what I brought up earlier is to have that information brought to us, especially dealing with transportation. So when I do able to be in those meetings, I can either, of course, if it hasn't been approved at all in the council, I'm not gonna move forward with it. I have to let them know that I have to state myself. Along with the other cities too, I'm not the only one. So that would be a benefit for us. Thursday, I had a Suncor visit with Jeff. Very great conversation. We probably talked about 45 minutes, almost an hour about things. And the conversation that I had was not in a way where in the past was more a defensive type of conversation where defending Suncor. This was more like, yes, we have issues and this is what we're going to address. We were actually there, Suncor's that site actually is the worst performing when it comes to efficiency. And trying to make sure those numbers can go up. Talked about wet scrubbers, all kinds of different ways that they could bring efficiency to that plant. The roads that go through the facility, everybody uses those and they're just horrible. But they do not know if they're responsible for those improvements, if it's the city's responsibility or if it's the state. So we can find that out. They said, hey, we produce asphalt. We need to get ahead of this. And they would like to, look at making those improvements. Vegetation around there is kind of really dry. They're also looking at electrification. They want to bring in solar and look at changing some of their vehicles over to be more efficient. Almost like what the Army's doing around the country and taking all their light duty vehicles and electrifying them. So they're trying to see where that. I asked about ag voltaic on their site and they're interested in pursuing that as well. And I also asked them to come before city council because the citizens need to hear this. I mean, great conversation, but you need to bring forward your plan. I did say, you may get attacked by folks, but they have a right to voice their opinion. And but you need to address the whole portion of the city, especially this portion, impacted community. And they're open to see what they could do. And I don't want just something to go on and get along. That portion has to stop. We have to really be proactive because Suncor coming in their huge impact to that environment around there. And it's more we need to work together instead of looking at they're bad actors. And changing it, but they're gonna ones who have to do that because our citizens has spoken loud and they want action. And so he's willing to come forward, try and figure that out, to have a conversation. And that conversation has also happened with city council too. But that was my talk and the messaging I had. Adams County Mayor and Youth Award stated that was great as well. And I was warned that we were gonna have to participate. I was like, nah. So we had to get up there, and not only open up the youth award, but actually talk to stories and the kids, because those are huge impacts. And and that was just a snapshot, and only 3 kids went forward. But so many were identified, and you see the struggles with their parents. These are kids that are going through life and they lost their parent, the only parent that they had. And now someone else has to pick up where that parent is not there and provide care and responsibility for that child. And it is tough. And some of these kids struggle with disabilities. Some are bullied, and it's whatever we can do to help these kids get through their life. Yeah, I mean, it's priceless. So I appreciate the opportunity and looking forward to other things as well. But thank you, Councilmember Douglas.
I forgot one thing. I got invited to Caldando's Taco Tuesday at Eagle Point. Yeah. And it was so awesome. They had the little ear interpreters and everything, and I finally learned how to use them to when there's English speaking, I just pull the plug on the hearing and then put it back in. But there was a representative from CDPHE there, and then Dr. Rosemary Russo also presented. But Calderando has an ask. They did their own monitoring with their promotores, and they would like to be included in the study session, and they would like to talk about their project that they did with the SAP money. That was monumental. They got $1.8 million from that SAP money that was fined to Suncor. Most of the money that was fined by the state went back to Suncor. I don't know what they did with it, but them getting that much money to do their own monitoring, they got to pick the scientists with equipment and everything. The findings are pretty scary, but they would like to be on a study session. I promised them that I would ask. So, thank you for letting me circle back.
Sure. Yeah, and I forgot to mention when I was speaking to them about the money they received and everything with it. So they said they would talk about that as well.
I think that's really crucial because BPUF's now taking over all of that too. I forgot on Wednesday we did with Thornton Community Connections, CDPHE and Groundworks Denver, an emergency and a older organization, emergency climate preparedness for when there's wildfires or floods or certain things going on for communities, like a number of issues. Ozone days, and it was really, really good. The next one is going to be hopefully in Commerce City and is going to be actually emergency climate preparedness packs. We also got a grant for water filters with Adams County Health Department and Brownsville Protector as well. So we'll be handing out water filters in BIC communities and for women for the Mountain Brownsville, Denver, and CDPHE and Adams County Health Department all got that grant. Or CDPHE gave us the grant, forgive me. And we'll be not just talking about water filters, but hopefully educating with South Adams Water to do tours, start getting kids into understanding how to take care of their own water and a workforce development. That's it.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you all. No, just saying thank you all. Appreciate it. Thank you.
We're adjourned. This is before 9:30.
Thank you all. Yeah, I did talk about
Like I said, it's all or it's-
Love it.